Hello, my fellow Westorians. Welcome back to the show. Not a normal time, not an abnormal time either. We're here on a Wednesday. It's the middle of the season, before the big time jump. We thought this would be a good time to catch up on questions. A lot of y'all have asked some things that we haven't been able to get to, some new questions from last week, including things, and as well as including things back from earlier in the season. It's a good time to chat through a lot of those, set ourselves up for the second half, have a little fun. Of course, that's always the bottom line here, having fun with this. And, you know, I hope you all are enjoying this show as much as we are. We may have hoped it was this good, but I wouldn't dare to express the hope ahead of time that it would actually be this good. It feels like setting yourself up for disappointment. Mm-hmm. And I'm a little scared to hope it stays this good, but I do have a lot of confidence in their process. Is that kind of how you feel too, Shea?
Yeah, I've been doing a top TV shows list every year since 2016, a top 50 TV shows list. So I never got to rate the first seasons of Game of Thrones, so I really can't say where I would have placed Game of Thrones seasons 1 through 4 or whatnot. But the later seasons maybe got to number 19 or 20. I watch a lot of TV. Whereas House of the Dragon season 1, this is easily a top 10 show of the year for me. So I'm loving it.
Right on. So, yeah, we've got a lot of questions built up here, and we've got stuff from YouTube, from our Facebook group, from Twitter, from Patreon, of course, Gmail, live comments. Anyone here live, you're welcome to contribute a question. We will try to get to every question we see. You don't have to send a super chat to get your question answered, but that is the most certain way to get noticed. You know, we'll probably notice it anyway, but if you really want to make sure you get noticed, you have that option available. And if we have time, we're going to share some memes at the end. This season has been, like all seasons, there's plenty of jokes that come along, and we want to highlight some of the best jokes that we've seen, because, again, this is about having fun, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, Shea agrees.
Simply, yes. It is about having fun. And I encourage you, if something in the fandom is making you not have fun, mute it, block it, ignore it.
Or watch something else, right?
Yeah, I guess that's true too.
No one's making anything. No one's making any of this stuff happen. You are not forced. So I want to give a shout out to our regular patron supporters like Jeff Nar the Long Snapper, History of Westeros' First Sword, and Dragon Lord Eric the Evening Shade, Lord of the Groves, and Defender of Stygi, Rider of Ixodes Scapularis the Bloodthirsty, a dragon with purple scales and wings, with a red underside, black horns, and green eyes. I love the black and green incorporated there. I've got my own black and green dragons here on my mic stand.
Yeah, I have no dragons on my mic stand. I had a green dragon, but Aziz took it.
And I stole it. Yeah, that's how you got to get ahead in these dragon wars. You got to have all the dragons. As things stand right now, the Greens don't really have dragons, but you know that'll change. And which brings me to the next mini topic before we get to our first question: spoiler policy. This episode is going to be full of spoilers. Our Monday episodes are spoiler free. Our Saturday episodes are spoiler full. And to just go a little deeper with that, I am unspoiled as far as the rest of the season goes. I have guesses. We have episode titles, which is something we'll talk about this episode. There's been some confirmation on what the rest of the season's episode titles are. We'll cover that near the end. So I haven't seen the leaks. I haven't read the leaks. I haven't watched any of that. So I really don't know what's coming, other than I do have a very strong knowledge of Fire and Blood. So I have a lot of strong guesses. Strong, haha. But Ashaya, your situation's a little different, right?
Yeah, mine is different. Before the season aired, there were leaks that came out of the whole season. And I do monitor the chat, so I do need to know what the real leaks are. So I did read that synopsis. It was a very basic synopsis of each episode before the season. So there's tons of stuff that were changed that weren't mentioned because it was a short synopsis. And also my memory is bad. So some stuff I just plain forgot because I haven't refreshed myself on it. But there were certain things that I was like, no, like I need to know if someone's trolling in the chat or not. I think y'all understand that. Yeah. So I try to take a step back and not theorize about certain topics because I just know the answer. But for the most part, I don't know the answer to a lot of the questions that we're theorizing on, to be clear. Like the leaks were not extensive or exhaustive.
So to be clear, one of the main reasons she needs to know what these things are so she can properly vet our comment section and cut out true spoilers. If she doesn't know what the leaks are, she can't identify just guesses versus people actually spoiling what's really to come. So it's a little tricky because, of course, some of the spoilers just come from Fire and Blood. But anyway, that's where we're at with that. If you have subtopics you're enjoying, we're going to be covering more towards the end of the season or after the season, specific subtopics within the season, within Fire and Blood. This would be a good time to bring that up if you have ideas for that. We're going to be thinking about what to cover towards the end of the season and after the season. So that would be a very nice thing to suggest. If you have ideas, we're all ears. We have parallel lives videos coming. Something we've done for quite a while is make tweets and comments and 1 or 2 full-length episodes on that concept. We're going to start doing visual short versions of that with individual comparisons. The first one will be out very soon. Shaya's almost done with it. Yeah. And that's going to be fun. So shout out to that.
That's like about 10, 11 minutes. They're pretty short little episodes.
Yeah. We also have Dance of the Dragons Part 5 with Radio Westeros imminent as well. Probably not by the end of September, but early October or something like that. We'll see. We're all very busy with our coverage of House of the Dragon. But we are intent on completing that collab, and we have planned that it will be 7 in total. So that's another piece of progress we've made.
Holy number.
Yeah, it's a very holy number. Exactly. It is a very sacred number. Karina Strick sends a super chat from New Zealand, says, we'll catch up later. Much love to you guys. And much love to you all as well, Karina, and the rest of you. We love you all, and we're so glad to be on this journey with you. It's a little momentous, a 10-year time jump. It's a lot, right? That's a big deal. But it really says great things about the show. That this is one of my biggest complaints, which is that we kind of wish we weren't jumping so much, that we could see a lot of this. I get it. I get why they're doing it. It's not a real complaint like, oh, what a bad choice. But a part of me was like, well, I wish we could see all this play out. And I wish we could see more of Emily Carey and Millie Alcock and some of these other actors that are moving on. But they couldn't have predicted that it would have 29 million viewers per episode, which is just a staggering number. I mean,
and it's going to be... I'm super curious how this time jump is going to play out for the 28 million more casual, like let's say 1 million of those are the really people who are going to be into it no matter what. So I'm curious if it's going to be a hit with people because they like the increase in action as things go forward, or if they're really still going to miss Millie and Emily, because people are definitely pretty sad about it right now, about the idea. Whereas we were prepped before the season to know, no, Emma and Olivia are Alicent and Rhaenyra. So I think a lot of us are mostly excited.
Yeah, it's going to also look different in a few weeks when we start to get used to the new characters, rather than just so far we're talking about it having not really seen them more than just in a few previews, like snippets here and there. We haven't gotten to see the full power of their skills as actors and all that, as well as the change in their characters that comes with such a large time jump. But yeah, I have confidence in it, even though it is a bold thing to do, even though it makes sense to do. It's still risky, like you say, for the casual viewers. Although I don't know what a casual viewer of House of the Dragon looks like these days. Like a casual viewer of a lot of shows versus a casual viewer of this show, I don't know if it's the same thing. You just have to be more aware and attentive, I guess. I think people still get a lot out of the show, even when they miss a lot of details. I think that's one of the things that worked for the first show as well, is that even when you miss, even if you don't know the names of the characters, even if you're confused about the timeline, it seems like that wasn't a big problem for people. Yeah. Like they're still yeah, this is still great. Even though I don't know what that person's name is or who the heck how are they related again? Who is she the lord of, lady of? Those problems aren't big, for a casual audience,
Yeah, I agree with that. Although I think the problem of becoming attached to certain actors is always going to be an issue, because characters get killed off. So even beyond there being time jumps, that's been a thing where people are like, well, I'm done now that Robb Stark's gone. I love Richard whatever.
That is a real way to set yourself up for disappointment. Is to go into a Game of Thrones show fixated on one character whose fate you don't already know. If you know they're going to live, that's different, right? If we're out here standing, I don't know, Aegon the Third, who hasn't even appeared yet, we're like, oh, I love him. If they kill him off, I'm going to be mad. It's like, well, okay, you're fine then, because that guy's going to survive. But so speaking of Emily Carey, our first comment from Sunny Day Tea Factory. Emily Carey's stepdaughter stare, in reference to that, rather, the quote is, Emily's face acting emoted the coldest stare I've ever seen in cinema. Amazing actress. She will be missed. Yeah, that is... several of us cited that stare. It's just, yeah, that is... If looks could kill, that is a... Millie Alcock would be dead. Yeah, totally. Not much to say about that other than a full agreement.
Yes.
Brenda Y says, has Harwin Strong been set up well enough for the Unsullied? That's a good question. It's hard for us to answer being so deep in it as we are.
Well, I have a story here about Harwin Strong that I got messaged by an Unsullied friend of mine about Harwin Strong. And he said, like, he wanted to cosplay him. And I was like, oh, cool. And so then he comes over and he says, yeah, there's so much good fan sentiment towards him in the fandom. Like on Twitter, he keeps seeing all these positive Harwin tweets. So I doubt he's going to do anything too bad. And I doubt he'll die in the next episode. And my face, y'all, I could not keep it together when he said that. I was like, well, we'll see if you still want to cosplay him after he is, in fact, gone in one episode.
Yeah, he is going to die in the next episode. That is an Unsullied friend of mine who is like, he sees a lot on Twitter in the Twitteros sphere, so he's a little less Unsullied than the average person, but he hasn't read Fire and Blood and is not familiar with the character of Harwin, and he was like, who's Harwin? So somewhat set up, I think. Like, people are aware of Harwin. Yeah. So we've had a running joke that there's autocorrect for Otto Hightower, but the actor who plays Harwin, Breakbones, his name is Ryan Core. So he's Ryan correct. Ryan correct. Yeah, anyway. Had to get that in before he dies, right?
I know.
So yeah, there is, and we'll talk about it more on our episode 6 preview on Saturday, but yeah, the Harrenhal fire is here. It's coming. Yeah. It's this episode.
Yeah, we are trying to stick to more overarching topics here because, we have a Saturday stream you can look forward to.
Is there a chance it's in episode 7 or is it definitely episode 6? Or are we pretty sure?
I think I don't know for sure. I don't. Okay, this is a case, to be clear, where I do not remember what the leak said on if it was. I know this is going to happen, but this isn't where I'm saying I know for sure episode 6 or episode 7.
We'll say a strong suspicion.
Yeah, but no, I really don't remember for sure. But I know for sure that it does happen because that's not something they would change. And we saw in the preview a fire that Lionel is dealing with. So we've seen footage of this is not a change.
Brenda also says, was this nod about the Bravosi plant growing here at King's Landing a nod to the lemon trees? We speculated at the end of our last episode that it was. A lot of y'all might have missed that since it was right at the end. But yeah, I think so. There's a very good chance that they were referring to that. This writing team knows a lot of these theories. They're very well versed in the material. So you got to give them a nod for probably doing that. You know, with a different writing team, I might have been like, it's probably just an accident. It might have just worked out that way. But it's so specific. Yeah. Bravos. It's not some other northerly spot that we've heard of. Yeah, it's a very, very telling. So I think so. Yusuf Ilalam. Oh, and here's my cue to point out that I will probably mispronounce a few names this episode. Having a name like mine, I'm used to it.
Yeah, we both have. I never mind when people mispronounce my names because I'm so used to it. So I also am pretty tolerant to mispronouncing names.
Yeah, so hopefully you all are as tolerant with us as well for that. So yeah, it's interesting. Yusuf brings up the concept of blacks and greens bias and how so many people have a preconceived bias towards the blacks because of Fire and Blood, because of things we know already. But
also, let me say, I saw polls before the season started of like Team Black versus Team Green, and it was always like 85% green, 15%. Other way around. 85% black, 15% green. It was extreme. So I'm very curious how the polls are going to go.
It does seem different this time, though, doesn't it? The Greens are a lot more sympathetic, aren't they?
Yeah, like I still feel like if we were to run a poll right now, it would be like 70-30 or something, but that's still like doubling their numbers. The Greens, like, that's not too shabby.
A lot of people cannot separate what they already know, and don't even try to, and that's not a criticism. It's just how can you delete information you have from your brain and not take it into account? It's not the simplest thing to do. So yeah, even I, who when I'm trying to remove my anti-green bias from Fire and Blood, I'm still It's hard to do that. But I totally like the performance of Emily and Otto and Reese, like mixing up their real names and their character names. They do that so much. It's just really good. It's really nuanced. I think Otto is a lot less villainous. Alicent's is a lot more understandable. Even Kristen Cole's more understandable. I mean, he's still a jerk, but and Rhaenyra comes off worse, and Daemon to me comes off as about the same. Differently the same, but he still comes off as villainous, which he does in Fire and Blood, personally to me.
But and for people asking what polls we're referring to, I'm referring to general Twitter polls, fandom polls that have gone on in the Facebook group and on Twitter, specifically those two places, because I've seen ones that we've run, ones that friends, other podcasts have run. So general polls, not certainly not like 20,000 person polls, but like 2,000 person polls.
Like, for example, one of the reasons I see a question here in the chat, why are the Greens more sympathetic? Can we give some examples? Well, one of them in particular is Otto doesn't come off nearly as villainous or as ambitious. He comes off as an ambitious person that also cares about the king. He cares about his well-being to some degree. He definitely comes off as somewhat villainous, but he's not out here like... that we know of. Maybe we will find out that he has been doing these things, but out here like arranging murders and things like that. And Alicent, I feel real bad for her. I mean, probably won't later, given what we know what's probably coming. But like the way she's set up, she was pushed into this marriage. She was a very good person early on. She was trying to create harmony between the factions before they became factions. She was just a good person, especially for someone her age. I don't know how you can't feel a little sympathy for that. So
yeah, I don't know how either, to be honest. But people don't.
Yeah, but some people already know where she's going, and that just erases it. And I get that.
Yeah,
I get that.
Yeah.
So, but that does make it tricky. That makes the discourse a little tricky when you're talking to people who have already made up their minds based on things that haven't technically happened yet.
Yeah, that haven't technically happened, and we don't know for sure will ever happen in the show.
Yeah.
And that might make them even madder if that doesn't actually end up happening. I mean, I do think Alicent will be involved in some terrible things, but I don't know. At this point, I don't know. I feel like even the worst things she's described as doing in Fire and Blood, she might never do, or might do in such a different context that I'll understand it.
It could be very ambiguous, and we won't be able to for sure say that she did it. But for example, we know it's not ambiguous that her father has pushed her to believe that her children will be killed by Rhaenyra, which is the number one thing a mother or any parent would fear. That's the number one thing you would be scared of if it's a legitimate fear. And she's just been told that over and over and over. And she's come to believe it because she's now seen that Rhaenyra is dishonest about some things. So I sympathize with that too. Like, whether it's true or not, it might be true, but it might not be. Otto might be exaggerating. He might be exaggerating a lot, but he might be telling the truth. And he might be telling the truth as he sees it. He might be wrong about what actually happens, but he might be right. So that is from this uncertainty is where some sympathy comes from. Among other things.
Yeah, among other things. And, yes, I mean, sometimes people are just like, I think Olivia Cooke and Emily Carey are hotter. Like, sometimes it's just that. Like, I'm into Kristen Cole. Like, and that's the difference for people, and that's valid too, considering lots of black supporters.
And it's all fictional. Like, it's not like you're like actually picking your favorite real world politician based on what they look like, which people do.
Yeah, but that's true.
That's problematic in the real world. It isn't really.
It doesn't matter for this series, really. If you want to be like Kristen Cole's sexy, I'm into it. Then like, go do it.
Yeah,
like, have fun with the series.
It is. We come back to that again. It's about having fun, so have fun. Yeah. I hope you don't carry that over to real life, though.
I do hope that as well.
I will say that. Fodder for Foreshadowing says, guys, what if the reason we have a record of births and hair colors, etc., the same thing that Ned and Jon Arryn studied early in the Game of Thrones, is because Alicent commissioned such a thing to be written in order to record Rhaenyra's kids and document all this? So this is an older joke. It's an older code, but it checks out. That at last we get to go from the seed is strong in Game of Thrones to the seed is strongs in Fire and Blood. Harwin Strongs, obviously. Yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea. Obviously, we have no way to say that's definitely what happened, but it fits super well. I love theories like this that fit the world building, even though we can't possibly say, yes, that's definitely it. It's such a great fit. Alicent has a connection to Old Town, obviously more than just a connection to Old Town, but that's part of why this is fitting. Connection to the Citadel. We've talked about the Maesters maybe leaning their way, if not fully being on their side. This would be a way to maybe document the bastardy of this regime or something like that, something to maybe justify their actions later historically. Yeah, it's a great call. I hope that it's even possible they throw in a reference to this that makes us believe that could it be. I mean, maybe they'll bring that old book back, or an earlier version of that book, the one Ned was reading, the ponderous tome.
Yeah, no, I'm just liking. I really do. I love the idea of that's how the book starts in the first place. Is this exact scenario? That was the first one. No, I actually think that it started before that, but.
Yeah, could be. It could be. Sandy Hartcorn says, as fellow book readers, do you feel like Harwin could have been set up by Lionel and Larys to hook up with Rhaenyra to get Strongs on the Iron Throne? Harwin's acting on the nod from Lionel made me rethink this. Love your channel. Thank you, Sandy. Appreciate that and the support. Yeah, I do. I think it's possible. I'm not sure that Lionel's thinking of Harwin hooking up with Rhaenyra, but we can't put it past him. He's aware of everything. Like, Lionel knows Laenor's orientation. He knows Rhaenyra probably wants or might need some side piece to, well, because, why not, right? He's reasonable and would expect a person to want that. It's a reasonable expectation for someone. So he could think, well, why not my son? Of course, that would put him on a trajectory to be compromised in the same way Otto ended up being compromised. Well, now the Hand of the King's daughter son in this case, is hanging out with the heir to the throne and having kids with him. That's obviously makes you unable to be neutral about a lot of things going forward. It puts into question your loyalty, just like it did for Otto.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it really puts Lionel in the best position. Yeah, to me.
As far as Larys being involved in that, I don't think so. It looks like Larys is aiming to be a green, or at least working in that direction. More on that in a minute. But I suspect Larys is going to be the person who actually kills his brother and father. Very good chance of that. And of course, in Fire and Blood, it's one of those things that they would never know what happened. It could have been an accident. They blame it on Daemon. They blame it on Viserys. I think not blame it on. These are all suggestions. Which the idea that Viserys did it is wild, but it's suggested. He just doesn't seem like the type. But they don't. They mention Larys too. They throw that as maybe Larys just murder. It's like a pretty straightforward follow the money situation. He benefits enormously from it. He becomes Lord of Harrenhal. So he's probably the guy that benefits most from it. On the other hand, this also sets up Otto's return. Yeah. So if we're going to throw out the idea, maybe Otto does start getting involved in actual murders and things like that, if he hasn't already, this would be a golden opportunity. Kill the Hand of the King off. Of course, he can't predict he'll be recalled, but it gives him a shot. And and that is what happens. So he definitely does get recalled. So yeah. Whether that's just dumb luck for him or something he pushes for, or who knows. I think Alicent's going to push for it. I mean, yeah. She's going to want him back. Yeah. So hopefully that answers your question there. Also definitely agree with the great acting there. And the acting on the nod, just maybe something they had thought out.
Activate large sun.
Activate plan. Step in to be the new lover. So, John Malarkey says, Maesters have lots of things they have to learn. They're not necessarily all healers. This is an idea pushing, not back against the Maester conspiracy, but just, it could easily be something else. It's not necessarily, there's still other ways for the Maesters to conspire or be on the side of the Greens more so than the Blacks, or to take certain things for their own benefit. But it's true that Maesters are, as John points out, they're expected to learn a huge variety of skills: history, warcraft, public health, which isn't the same as treating individuals, right? Like sanitation is public health. Like Septon Barth was big on that. That doesn't mean Septon Barth was amazing at treating like sores on Viserys' back, for example. If Septon Barth had been treating that wound and didn't do a very good job, we wouldn't accuse Septon Barth of working against his king, I don't think. But because this guy we don't know about, because Melos we're not so sure about. Anyway, the point is, it's a good point by John to say that maybe Melos is just really good at some of these other things and just isn't that great of a healer, which we brought up as a possibility. He wasn't great as a healer, but we didn't suggest that. We didn't mention the possibility that he excels elsewhere, and that is why he's a Grand Maester, in spite of his maybe not great skills as a healer. Jim Martin on the same topic says, I'd love to hear your theories about how King Viserys lives long enough to survive the time jump. Yeah, the dude collapses at the end. His nose is bleeding. He collapses earlier in the episode. He looks a lot older, even though he's... I looked it up. We talked about it on Monday. I think my guess was pretty pretty close to right. I said late 30s. That should be about what he is. That's what he is in Fire and Blood at this time. He was born in 77. So when he dies in canon at age 52 in the year 129. So this would be, if we're doing a 10-year jump, he would be about 42 before the time jump, and earlier in the season he would have been in his late 30s, like I said. So that we were pretty close on that, if not right there. So I want to clarify that. But as far as how he lives, well, I think we sort of talked about it, and I think it's our best guess, is that Melos is going to die. Just of old age. No conspiracy or anything like that. He's just an older guy, and in this 10-year span, it looks like he's going to pass, and will get replaced either by Orwyle, who we saw already, or by, in the book, it's Gerardis, who is Rhaenyra's maester, and she really trusts him. She's come to trust him because he's the Dragonstone maester. And my guess is they won't necessarily do both Gerardis and Orwyle, since it seems like they've already set up Orwyle to be the one that's going to improve things. Like he suggests tinctures and poultices, which we get in Fire and Blood. That's exactly what Gerardis does to slow the progress of Viserys' disease. Now, of course, also in the book, Viserys does not have this proto-leprosy disease. He becomes sick after slipping on the throne late in his life, and then he loses his fingers. So that's something that happens like 3 years before his death, where here it happens like 15 or 18 years before his death. So anyway.
So yeah, I kind of agree that I think the way they played up how sick he was right now, I'm not surprised people think that Viserys has now died or is about to die, or is like, and they're going to be surprised that he survived 10 years. But I think they'll just be like, oh, he's really deteriorated and he can barely walk or he can barely move around, you know.
Yeah, I think it's really clever because it puts everyone, like, they aren't concealing the fact that for this to really progress as a plot, he has to die. But by having him in such ill health, it really ups the tension, because people could think he could just die any moment. Yeah. He could die right now. It's like, wow, he's alive after the time jump? Amazing. That means he really can't last much longer than that, right? So it really sets the tension, because he could just go any minute. And we're pretty sure it'll be episode 9, called The Green Council, which happens right after his death. So that stands to reason pretty well. A shout out to Helen M, who says, my husband is unsullied and he thinks Viserys just died. Yeah, we asked Sean if he thought that, and he was like, well, I kind of know he's not, so he didn't guess that. But someone who's not looking ahead, like Sean hasn't read Fire and Blood, he is unsullied, but he kind of picked up on it from the tones of the conversations, I guess. Shout out to Nina, whose name we haven't mentioned in a while, always a big contributor to our book-centric episodes. She points out that in the real world, Red Squirrel fur trade may be responsible for the leprosy outbreak in medieval Europe, of all things. Blame the squirrels. It's those poor squirrels. Yep, how about that? Random. Good trivia for you there. Share with us, by the way, your favorite Unsullied stories. Y'all, any of you out there, you've got good Unsullied stories, share them with us. We love hearing Unsullied stories. Yeah. They're really entertaining.
I like the cameraman in the chat said, wow, my dad and I did think he died.
There you go. Yeah. I mean, it's the last thing that happens. And then you hear there's a 10-year time jump. You're like, okay, I guess that guy's dead. Yeah. Totally.
It's a very valid thing to think. But no, we have seen him in the preview for next week and in a few other shots as well.
Yeah. So that is going to be really something. Okay, so definitely send us your favorite Unsullied stories. The best ones we'll put on the podcast. Kate Nelson, let's stick on the strong topic here for a minute. The strong topic. She says, I'm interested in your thoughts on Larys Strong. What were his motivations in tattling on Rhaenyra to Alicent? Is he just stirring up trouble for the hell of it, trying to position himself as a whisperer of sorts for Alicent out of pure self-promotion? A chauvinist who is already plotting to make sure a male heir succeeds. I feel like his father and brother are loyal to Viserys and Rhaenyra at this point, so why is Larys plotting against them? On Monday, we discussed the possibility that he's playing both sides. We even have a new meme from It's Always Sunny. And one joke
Magician.
I couldn't... from Joe Magician made this meme from It's Always Sunny. That's right. Shout out to Joe Magician,
It says, it's Larys edited into Mac from Always Sunny saying, I'm playing both sides so that I always come out on top.
Now, I had to restrain my spoiler muscles when this joke was made on Monday, because this joke fits even better than we could have hoped. If you haven't seen this episode of It's Always Sunny, Mac slashes his hand open multiple times as like a blood oath, and it's humorous. Larys Strong is the one who suggests they slash their palms for a blood oath during the Green Council. I mean, come on. It's so perfect. Like, wow. Yeah, that is an incredible, So, but of course, Larys Strong, way smoother than Mac. Way smarter than Mac. Yeah, way ahead of the game. So we did discuss this on Monday, and some new ideas here. Other than the possibility that they are playing both sides to make sure one side comes out on top. One idea I've seen, which is just cutting to the chase and rather than cutting to the palm, is pretty straightforward and very believable, which is that he is kind of like Otto, and he says, yeah, the realm is going to not stand for this. They're going to back the man. That's who's going to win. I want to be on the winning side. And of course, it's not his family. He's going against his own family to do this, so it's a lot bolder move. But if he also is already the kind of guy who's planning on offing his family to become Lord himself, which I doubt he just came up with that idea later. I'm thinking he's wanted to be Lord a long time if he just premeditated
so, okay,
murder
let's go on the record here. Do you think Larys wants to kill his family and be Lord and did it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I do think the show is going to tend to lean towards the more dramatic, sensational interpretations from Fire and Blood. And I think this is just a good one anyway. Like, this guy's a plotting plotter, and he he's a Master Whispers type. It just fits really well. And they've already shown him to be kind of creepy and Littlefinger-ish, Varys-ish. So, yeah.
Yeah, whereas I wonder if this is one of those ones where they can keep the viewer guessing and like if they can play it ambiguous.
Let's not forget that Larys is going to be a torturer too. He's going to torture blood and cheese to find out who did it and what happened there, and he's going to eventually cop to some things while being tortured. So, yeah, I mean, we've got a guy that's willing to torture, and this probably won't be the only person he tortures. In fact, there's like a little blip from next episode where we see someone in prison. We don't even know who it is, but it might be a burned body, might be the black cells. I don't know, but this could be we could be getting more setup for that. So I think that might be the simplest answer, that he wants to be on the winning side. He perceives the Greens as having the better chance of coming out on top. Maybe chauvinism may not have anything to do with it on a personal level for him.
Yeah.
He may view the realm as that level of chauvinist, kind of like Otto does.
I
thought Rhaenys.
It was interesting on the House of the Dragon HBOguide.com, like that with the website, they have the description for Harwin Strong calls him like a fierce protector to his brother Larys, which makes it seem like it's an affectionate relationship between the two of them, or at least on Harwin's side to Larys. I thought that was notable.
Yeah, I would be pleasantly surprised if it's something else, because
something a little more complex than just like, I want to be the Lord and not my brother and father.
Well, and Fire and Blood also points out that Larys, or rather that Lionel wasn't planning on going to Harrenhal with Harwin. He did. It was like a last minute change. He's like, I'm going to actually go with you. And then they both died in the fire. So it's possible he had only planned to
kill Harwin,
kill his older brother, and then inherit himself, or maybe kill his father later. Maybe he got lucky. Kind of like, it's a little vaguely like what our discussion about Daemon and Red. Like, he may have wanted to kill her, but he didn't necessarily plan on killing her at that moment until the opportunity just fell. Well, on her, almost on, I was going to say on him, on her head.
Whereas, I was thinking it was kind of like Harwin is a problem just in general in the realm as the father of these bastards, and that it's like, it is, again, like Lionel gets caught, in this fire because it's targeted at Harwin, not Lionel.
Yeah. And the book also, Fire and Blood, is just like, I didn't even list all the possible people that could have done the murder. Like the motives were suggested. Like even the sea snake was floated as a possibility because his grandchildren were his son was cuckolded basically.
Yeah.
And which, by the way, I think I figured out one of the trailer lines in that regard. One of the very first, it might have been the first trailer. The quote we get from Corlys is, history remembers name, or history doesn't remember blood, it remembers names. That was a little puzzling at the time. Like, what does that mean? I think we know now. I mean, we could have figured it out then even, which I think it refers to him coming to terms with the fact that those aren't his grandchildren. That the Strongs are not the sons of his son. And that's why he's like, well, I don't care that much. They have Targaryen blood. Their name will be Velaryon, well, except for the one who becomes King Targaryen. And he's like, yeah, that's what matters. The history book will say Velaryon, and that's what matters. And he doesn't care that their bloodline was technically someone else's. So I think that's probably where that line is going to come. But we shall see. We shall see. Moving on. Juzco says, also on this, staying on the same topic, are they hinting at Larys being a green seer and or warg? When we first see him, they linger on the heart tree. When he first starts talking, the face on the tree is focused on. Then we get him knowing information he really shouldn't, but they keep showing the rats. They're everywhere watching. Is he warging in the rats or anything like that? Well.
And we got a follow-up question also. Joe Berlin, question regarding Larys. What do you think of Joe Magician's theory that Larys is a green seer, which is why I wanted to shout out our good friend Joe Magician, who had a very successful video that has led to us getting lots of comments from people about this.
Well, first of all, let's recommend y'all go watch that video. I think it's only about 30 minutes. It's not a big time investment, and I would say it's worth it even if it was longer, but it's not a big time investment, so that's nice. It's a very good idea. Joe's been building these theories for a long time. This isn't something that just kind of occurred to him recently. And there's a lot of evidence for it. There's never, like a lot of things, especially supernatural, you can't just be like, yeah, definitely. But first of all, House Strong is very old. They're in that zone of first men houses that had really simple names. Stark, Strong, which, by the way, German, Stark, Strong, same thing. That's a bit of confusion for German readers that the word Stark translates as strong. So House Strong is something else. I forget what it is. We'll have to check with Michael.
We should ask.
I've forgotten what it was. So, like Rivers, or not Rivers, that's a bastard name, but Towers and Woods and all these other simple like nature
Flint.
names, or just, exactly. So stuff like that. So, and the Riverlands is basically the second most supernatural in terms of the old gods. Like the North is obviously first. The Riverlands but the Riverlands is second, right? It has things like the Ghost of Highheart and the grove of where she lives, and Alice Rivers, who is going to be a character in this show. Alice Rivers is probably a bastard of House Strong, and she definitely has magical powers. So you have a Strong right there with predictive magical powers, probably first men inherited. So it's really, you definitely can't dismiss this theory out of hand.
No.
It's absolutely possible. It's within his own family. The bloodline's there. The Strongs have been around there for forever. Yeah, it could totally work. It would explain how he knows these things. Now, it's not required to explain how he knows these things. We don't know how he learned about the tea, but this is information passed between humans. There are ways for him to have learned. He could have overheard it. He could have bribed the right person. The Greens could be in and on it already. Melos could have already been involved. Maybe the king didn't send the tea, and he just claimed the tea was from the king when he gave it to Rhaenyra. There's a lot of possibilities here that go beyond supernatural, but that would explain it. That would explain it.
Mm-hmm.
Anything to add, Shay?
We will see. I am a skeptic in general, but Ryan Condal definitely wanted to shout out to some more supernatural things in the show. The Werewood is there for a reason, whether it's just to keep you reminded that this is a supernatural world beyond the dragons or not. We'll see. The jury is out for me on here on whether I think I don't think Larys is warging into rats and seeing through eyes or anything like that, but I do think there's a possibility that he's able to see things through the tree or something. Like I don't know. It's possible. Yeah. It's possible. Yeah. I cannot dismiss it, but I am more skeptical than the average person.
I'd say, the idea that he's green seeing through a bunch of different animals is a little tricky, but not so bad because, this is what Bloodraven maybe does, or he's expected to have done. And this is also a person from the same region. Now, Bloodraven has the Targaryen blood as well, but it wouldn't be the Targaryen blood that gives him the green seer skills in the first place. So that fits pretty well. And he's a master of whispers too. Only a couple of generations before Bloodraven. Yeah. Very cool idea.
Yeah, if we're thinking that Bloodraven could do certain magical activities during his time, then why not Larys?
There's plenty of established ground for this. Yeah, it wouldn't be new.
Yeah, and again, and he doesn't have to even be seeing through a werewood or through rats. As D-Cell says, he can just have the sight like Jojen. He can just have vision sometimes.
Yeah, maybe it's green dreams. Yeah, maybe something like that.
So there's multiple options for Larys to have some sort of magical insight into something.
I fully agree with the way that scene was filmed. Adds a lot to the background of supporting the theory, just the way they filmed it with the voice and all that. Yeah, that was notable for sure.
Yeah.
Philosophy nerd lady says, if the Strongs are trying to be in on both sides, it's another family taken from English history. The Stanley family did just that in the Wars of the Roses, choosing at the very end to betray Richard III and help Henry VII, whose stepfather was a Stanley, at the Battle of Bosworth Field. Shea is giggling because she's thinking of Stanley from The Office.
No, actually,
you're not. Wow,
I just really liked. I just really liked the way that the Stanley family rhymed. It was really dumb.
You weren't thinking of Stanley?
I was truly.
I'm so surprised.
It was just I don't know why, but the Stanley family.
Yeah. That is, the Stanleys were kind of the phrase of the Wars of the Roses. I believe we, in fact, made that point during our panel on that at Ice and FireCon, and we will have a fuller episode on that someday. And yeah.
Now I'm thinking about Stanley Hudson, though. You're right.
Now I got you. You weren't thinking about it before, but you are now. Yeah, and that could be a good call there. I hadn't thought about connecting the Strongs to this, but there's certainly some other families that took both sides during these major conflicts. So, yeah. That's a good call. Tabitha M says, what are those marble things they use at council? Okay, good question. They look kind of like mouse balls to me.
Yeah, like the trackball. Like, oh, we're off. But look, wait.
We're
now you can see. Aziz's trackball, my trackball. We're a trackball mouse family. We're always ready to just pop our trackball out and have a council meeting.
Yeah.
I got a nice new purple trackball. I got a new mouse.
I'm going Aemon style.
Oh, you took yours out.
Yeah. I'm Aemon to one eye.
But but yeah, to go back to the image of the track balls of the council, you can see they're all different.
Track balls of the council.
They're all different. The Master of Ships to the Grand Maester. My favorite might be the Grand Maester one.
Yeah,
as
it kind of looks like
it looks like the chain links.
The Astrolabe.
It kind of looks like that too. You're right. Although for me, it just made me think of the chains, the different colors. And see, here's the Hand of the King one, which is this green and yellow one. Notably, Alicent. It has it for this is the Hand of the King's item, but it looks like this is the Hightower ball because later we see. I could probably pull it up even.
I want Mushroom to run in and start juggling all those balls. That'd be a good way for him to appear on the show finally. Just juggle all the quorum balls.
But no, Alicent is at the council meeting, and her ball is that ball, but she's not the Hand of the King. So I think it really is more of like that's the Hightower ball. And so Lionel Strong has his strong ball. His strong ball. But yeah, anyway, so those are a way for people to clock in, to be like, I'm here, and conceivably also a way for you to, if you can't make the meeting, you could give someone your ball and be like, hey,
have a ball.
Yeah. Hey, go handle this for me.
Yeah, like a signet ring, which we see is used for seals on wax and things like that. It's kind of the equivalent of. Yeah, it's a way to represent. It's a fancy way to represent like everyone's here.
But yeah, notable.
She's actually looking like it's a trackball.
Yeah, here, this one.
She's got her finger on top of it. Like
she's like I have a seat at the table is really what she's signifying there. But so it's interesting that she gets one of her own. I don't know if she has like an official position on the council going forward.
Yeah, or she's just heir to the throne.
Heir gets a ball. Yeah, or maybe maybe if I look closer, maybe that's like the ball that Viserys brings, and she's using Viserys'
him
because
he's gonna be really sick at this point. He's probably gonna be missing meetings.
Yes, maybe that's the Viserys ball in actuality. But yeah, I think it's. No, not on screen.
Move on to the next thing?
Yes.
Dreamfire has a great catch here. They say, Jason's sexist joke is really ironic when you consider what his wife does later in the story. I can't believe I missed this. That's part of why I call it such a great catch, because I really should have caught this. Jason, if you remember, Jason Lannister comes up and makes this joke about his wife taking too long, or her wife taking, or referring to Alicent, taking too long to get ready, which is why only men go to war. We joked about how bad a joke that was, especially compared to the general humor of his family. The Lannisters are probably the best joking family there is, but in Game of Thrones proper. So, but if you recall, Jason Lannister is going to get killed by Pate of Longleaf. He's going to get killed by a commoner, which is going to be funny for considering how highfalutin and arrogant he is towards anything that isn't fancy and highborn. But his wife is going to lead the West.
Johanna Westerling,
née Lannister, or Lannister née Westerling, is going to lead the West against the Ironborn when they take advantage of the chaos and the fact that the Western armies have gone to the Riverlands to fight in the war. They're like, Western armies gone, are they? Let's go. This is our chance. This is what we've been waiting for.
And then Johanna is going to be like, no.
And it's so meaningful because the Ironborn has been held in check for over 100 years. years. Aegon was like, no more raiding. And the Lord of the Iron Isles at the time was like, no more raiding. We can't face the dragons. Like, it's one thing to go against a king that just says no. It's another thing to go against a king that literally brought Balerion here and torched half of our island. We know what they're capable of. We're not doing that again. So the Iron Islands played nice for like 100 years until this opportunity. And they were just chomping at the bit to go after the Lannisters after holding back for so long. And they had a really capable leader in the Red Kraken. And this is why I should have realized this catch, because we wrote a whole episode on the Red Kraken. It's a patrons-only episode we did with Radio Westeros as part of our Dance of the Dragons coverage, so we really got deep into this topic, and we have a follow-up episode coming focused on Johanna's leadership, which is more of the second half of that whole thing. It's like first the Red Kraken gets it going, and then Joanna Westling takes over and starts to push back and really does her thing.
If it makes you feel better, Aziz, I didn't forget about Johanna, and I was going to bring it up on our Saturday stream when it was relevant, because it was not relevant on Monday, so I didn't bring it up. But I'm always thinking about Johanna. We actually commissioned art of her, because we have an upcoming episode on her as well, beyond the Red Kraken. So yes, she is going to be popular, I think.
That is why Shay and I make such a good team.
You forget and I remember. Is that why?
Yeah, exactly.
That's why.
You're my memory.
Oh, that's sweet.
We have another comment here about the a good cat joke.
The air ball. The hairball.
Yes. Yes, hers should look like.
Thanks, Zenel's Sun Chaser.
What do dragons cough up? Do they cough up scale balls?
Yeah.
Geez.
Probably bones.
Flaming, yeah. I don't know. We don't need to see what they cough up.
Yeah.
Brash the God says, here's a question I keep asking myself about House of the Dragon. Why doesn't anyone in the realm seem to use ravens to send messages to this point? They were used all the time in Game of Thrones, but for example, when Viserys sent the message to Daemon in the Stepstones fighting the crab feeder, he sent a physical person. Seems odd to forego raven messages altogether. Well, we have seen a raven. We have seen at least one.
Yeah, we've seen Otto write messages and like tie them up, and then we don't see him send it on a raven. But I've assumed that when he sends Hobart letters at the Old Town, that was through Raven.
Excuse me. Ravens have to be trained to go to certain locations. They're trained to go to certain castles only. They're taken and taught, and there's no ravens taught to go to the Stepstones. So that's just not a. It's like not a delivery spot. It's like UPS doesn't deliver there. It's imagine that, like FedEx does not deliver to this location. It's that. Yeah, ravens don't go to the Stepstones. So that explains it. I think mostly just a big part of it is that everyone is so close together. We're not seeing a ton of different locations. That will change, though. We will definitely see more and more ravens, especially towards the end of the season, at the Green Council and at the Black Council. They're going to start sending ravens and messengers both to see who's on their side and who isn't. So we will see more of that. Lana Joy Walquist says, I think we might be giving Corlys a bit too much credit in his defense of his wife's claim. Clearly they're great partners. However, when he married her, was it possible she could have been seen as a potential heir to the throne? So when he says justice, is he really just referring to his own ambition to have been king consort himself, which he can now push through his son instead? Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think it's probably both. He
might also, like as she says, he might also feel slighted and passed over. Like he's couching it in, I care about it on your behalf. But I agree that I do think that he is doing it right, like righteously, like he thinks on Rhaenys' behalf, but I also think that he personally feels slighted and is doing it selfishly. Like it can be both. And as Rhaenys has said, like this is something she's trying to move past and trying to like not fester in bitterness over and like live her best life and not do that. And he's kind of just brings it back up. It's hard to grow past something when when your partner in life does not want to move past it.
And Viserys says that pretty much straight out. I think it's episode 1 or 2. He says, "Ever since the Great Council, I've felt Lord Corlys's eye on me." Like,
not Lady Rhaenys,
not my cousin's
not
eye.
Princess Rhaenys' eyes. No, Lord Corlys is. You're exactly right. Viserys feels his envy, his jealousy, his lack of respect.
Which is part of why he got so mad at being rejected on Laena. He's like, because he thought that would, like, he deserved it. He thought, like, well, this makes up for that injustice. And he's like, you won't even do this. I'm out of here. Yeah. So, yeah, I think he takes a lot of it personally and not just on his wife's behalf. But definitely that's part of it. I think it's fair to say he absolutely also cares about his wife there.
Yeah.
which is what Lana was saying with her question. She's saying that it's probably both as well. So, yeah, good point though. Yeah, we can't just. This is getting into what Sean was saying. It's like Sean was like, I'm not super impressed with Corlys. He seems just really ambitious. And it was like, no, I think Sean would have agreed with this take.
Yeah, I was making fun of Sean on our Monday stream for being pro Larys, pro Kristen, and anti Corlys.
Yeah, it's so funny seeing that, but that's why we love these Unsullied takes. Because it's like it's so hard to sometimes it's hard to fathom that. But but when Sean lays it out the way he does, it's like, well, I still don't fully agree, but I get it. I'm not like, oh, you idiot. No, nothing like that. I'm like, okay.
I'm still pro Corlys, but his opinion about Laenor being gay was not a great look for him, and Rhaenys looked great. So really, I'm Team Rhaenys, and Corlys is her husband, so I'm into him too. But he hasn't distinguished himself to be the best person. I mean, he's pushing for wars that don't need to exist and all that. So I kind of feel Sean there. I'm not pro Larys and I'm not pro Kristen exactly, but
yeah, and we'll see. I think Corlys is going to be getting a lot more interesting, obviously, as things peak a little more, and we see how he responds to the Strongs and how he responds to the Greens pushing against now his in-laws and his grandchildren and all that. So there's a good chance for him to shift gears into a different mode.
Yeah, I feel like he'll be a lot more likable if he's like, no, I like their family. I don't care if they're not really Laenor's. Depending on how he reacts to this, I think people will respect and like his stance here.
I agree. Yeah, I feel like that's coming. I feel like they kind of played him more like a neutral, but now he's gonna his less agreeable qualities will be put to will be part of a more just cause, which will make him look better. Yeah, and maybe give him more time to shine. All right. Christy Robinson says, I think Rhaenys and Corlys had assumed or hoped the visit was to propose Laena for Daemon, and they were surprised, rather than Laenor.
That's an interesting take, just because they say, they bring up the fact that Royce is recently deceased, and so the timing on that. But I still think letters were exchanged before they arrived and asked this. I think that Lionel or someone was involved in reaching out to them and saying, hey, you guys would say yes to a proposal to Laenor. We're not coming out just to look like fools, right? Like, that's what I think, but I like this take.
Well, also, though, Laena we already got the point about Laena being betrothed to the Sea Lord's son.
Yeah.
So she's already betrothed. I mean, maybe we've already just skipped past that dude being killed.
Yeah, she might not currently be betrothed right now, but she was. And they didn't say, they said she was being betrothed. We didn't see, we haven't followed up on that.
Yeah. So we'll see. I think that Sea Lord of Bravos' son is just going to die during the 10-year interim. They may refer to it.
Yeah.
But it looks like at the end of the 10-year, we're just going to start with Laena and Daemon will just be married, and they'll just have to explain what happened.
With how flirtatious Laena was with Daemon at the feast, it made it seem like perhaps she wasn't betrothed right there and had eyes for him.
Or was totally willing to be like, can I get out of this betrothal? Because I'd much rather be with you. Yeah. Okay. Next up, Untitled List. You should reach back out to will we find out if the Caltrops will make an appearance? This is in reference to our interview with Ryan Condal, and are we going to see the Dragon Seeds? Yeah. So I'm pretty sure we'll see the Caltrops. I mean, Lord Hobart Hightower has maybe replaced having two characters of Ormond and Hobart. So we kind of wonder if Hobart will still be the one to drink with Ulf the White and poison him. So I think that's still going to happen. Pretty sure we'll still see that because the Caltrops are definitely going to want to remove Hugh Hammer and Ulf the White, and we'll have plenty to say about that at the time. But yeah, I think that's still going to happen. I think it's just really important, and they want to have all these dragons. We know we're going to see all the dragons, basically, so that probably includes seeing all these other dragon riders. Like, I don't suppose we'll have Vermithor and not have Hugh Hammer, because what's the point of Vermithor being around at all? So yeah, I think we'll see all that. They seem to want to cut very little, and what they have cut seems like aren't things of this size. That would be the biggest thing I've heard of being cut so far, if that gets cut. J&J says, are those the same tapestries Littlefinger has brought to the Vale? This is referring to the new tapestries from Qohor and Norvos that Alicent was suggesting Daemon take a tour of, that prompted Viserys to laugh.
to be clear, I think there's multiple tapestries or paintings or murals that people are referring to. There's the ones from Norvos and Quohor, and then there's also these sexy ones behind Alicent's bedchamber that have been there before.
Are those tapestries or murals?
Those are murals, but I think that people sometimes call them tapestries, so I wanted to be clear that I think those are murals on the wall, not the tapestries, but that there were also separate new tapestries from Norvos and Quohor. Just that.
Either way, the tapestry's Littlefinger brought to the Vale were Robert's hunting tapestries. Yeah. They weren't Targaryen tapestries, so probably not. Those are specifically ones that have Baratheons, including Robert himself. Yeah. So
whereas these Norvosian and Quohoric tapestries are probably cool things in Norvos and Quohor, but maybe it was like something they commissioned of Targaryen things too. But my headcanon is that these are like tapestries of things from across the seas, so it would have been cool to look at. Daemon should have gone and seen it.
Sophia A says, in reference to our joking about the Royce runes just being from the Wikipedia page on runes, she says, to be fair, they may have also been wanting to keep the Royce runes consistent with those in Game of Thrones, since we do see runes on Jon Royce's cloak in the main series, and those were also real-world Nordic runes. So yeah, maybe that was just an issue of consistency. They just wanted to say, all right, well, we'll just use the same runes they used, and those are the same runes they use. So there you go. Yeah, and that's not a big deal either way, but that's a good catch. We didn't know that. Didn't know that about the original show. So cool. Yeah. That fits very much. Let's take a quick break. We're at about 1 hour in, so we'll take care of a quick shout out or two, and then get back to the questions. Would love to shout out our lovely patrons. We do that. We used to do this a little more regularly. We do it during our scripted episodes still, and we'll bring it back every once in a while as well, because our patrons are such a great group, and we want to make sure they get their due.
Yeah, so dig in, everyone. We're about to hear Aziz read a lot of names.
Yeah, well, not too many here at the midpoint, mostly at the end, but there'll be a few. There'll be a few. We get the mid-roll section here where we got a couple. We got Kohol Koi, called Sun Piercer, wielder of a dragonbone bow. We got Kokavo the Tamer, wielder of the Wildfire Whip Gehenna. We got screenwriter Catherine Van Pelt, wielder of the Valyrian Steel Quill, slayer of unoriginal screenplays. And we've got our, where did they go? We've got our Queens of Love and Beauty. From the depths of Flea Bottom, Lord Ken of House Hammer has declared for Queen Carrie, Fire of the North, who recovered Dark Sister from beyond the wall. And a Laurel of Glory in the name of love to Bud of House Beresford, Knight of Tolkien, and Arbiter of Scotch from Sandy the Dragon, Blood of Queen Daenerys, and Lady of Jameson. Yeah. Also, we've got a couple of our excellent sellsword captains. Peter Blaze of the Emerald Isle, captain of the Werewood Wanderers, to long lives, quick deaths, cold beer, and warm women. Daegron, Marshal of Yax, captain of the Red Tide, resistance is futile. Kyron Callsbane is captain of the Stone Shields, the torrent breaks upon the stone. Hema Helminth, captain of the Whispering Children, dead men tell no secrets. Shepard, the shepherd of Essos, all men are sheep before the shepherd, heir to the Whispering Children. Lady Lajar Dajot, the Iron Lily, master archer, castellan of the Summer Island Keep, Arboreal Point, captain of the all-female Wailing Widows, women and children first. Lord Brandon Brewer of Castle Blackroon is captain of the Shadow Wolves. Our steel is cold, our vengeance colder. Black Alex Sand is the Bastard of Spears, leader of the Bermuda Vanguard. Vorian of House Betterfetter is captain of the Golden Fetters. We face oppression with style. Aegon the Underestimated, captain of the Clanking Dragons. Our Clank is Clank as Clank. And Lady Sarah Connolly the Willful. Wit beyond measure is man's greatest treasure. Jenny's patron. More shout-outs at the end. I love reading those names. It's been a little while since we've done them on a live stream. But we love to show love. And we love that you all show love to us. All right, lots of questions. Let's get back to it. Stannis Baratheon says, a lot has been made about Daemon's ED issues. What do you think the showrunners are trying to tell us? Is he only willing to impregnate Valyrians? Well, I mean, Rhaenyra was one of the ones he couldn't get it up with too, and she's Valyrian. But I did briefly have that thought too. Like maybe it's only dragon riders, but I think, Syrax. I mean, Syrax.
She's a dragon rider. I think it's just meant to indicate that he's more complex emotionally and has a lot on his mind than you think. You know, like I to me, that's what I take from it, is that Daemon isn't just like, he can't just like put things out of his mind and work and get things to work without being too graphic with it. But he's a thinker. He's thinking about all of these things. He feels guilty about things going on in his life. That's what it says to me, is that there's something simmering below the surface for him, I guess. I don't know about you, Aziz.
I think that's a pretty good explanation. It certainly seems to fit like all the different situations.
Whereas I think that once he feels a little less conflicted and a little like he will clearly have children, and he clearly has success sometimes. So it's not like he's just impotent. That's his life. It's like sometimes he can't get it up.
Yeah, it may also make some people wonder about, like what he's capable of. It also, I think it does, but I think it really does. It shows that he has other gears. Like if it was just this, some people might think he was just some sort of psychopath, or like a sociopath. But no, like this is not a trait a person without empathy would have.
Yeah, it's like
he may not have a lot of empathy, but he has. Yeah,
exactly. That's exactly it. That a less complex person would just have been able to get it up with Rhaenyra right there, and that would have been the situation. But Daemon, as much as he wanted to, deflower her and make it so that she had to marry him or whatever his like plans were, he couldn't do it. He still felt somewhat guilty over it.
Yeah. Chad Summertrial says, haven't watched the newest episode yet. Did Daemon kiss Rhaenyra starting the fight? Someone said that. I don't think that's what started the fight. No, I don't think that would have started the fight. I'm not sure why Joffrey Lonmouth would be the issue if Rhaenyra and Daemon are kissing.
I think that if Kristen saw Rhaenyra and Daemon kissing, he might have exploded right then and there. Like, I do think that could have caused him to explode to Joffrey, who was right next to him, and they were just having a conversation.
Yeah, it would fit.
I think that
there's
could
better
work.
fits than that, probably.
We don't
but
see,
we don't know.
we don't see Daemon and Rhaenyra kiss, and we don't know whether that actually happened. We just see Daemon like squeeze her face up.
Presumably, they were both distracted by the commotion as well. As soon as it broke out, like they were interrupted.
Yeah. Before
it could progress. But yeah, that is it's very ambiguous. But I personally don't think that's what started the fight. But it's I don't know if we can rule it out. But
I think this is a situation where if you want to believe that that's what caused Kristen to break, if that's the satisfying answer for you, then believe that.
Yeah.
Then we're not going to see how that actually broke out. So you can believe what you want to believe to make it believable, honestly.
That's true. And we'll have a bit more to say about Kristen here coming up a little later. Mm-hmm. Devil's Advocate book verse show cue. The book had Daemon at the Stepstones when Rhea died, implying he may have had something to do with it, or may not have. Show, we see him clearly there. Was it murder or mercy death? Well, I mean, it was ultimately murder, given he did kill her. He may not have been aiming for her to die in that moment, falling off her horse. I think there's a pretty strong case to be made that he was going to kill her at some point. He intended it, but it wasn't premeditated in that moment. Doesn't mean he didn't have that intent. The show, it is harder to tell in the book because, he could have sent an agent to do it.
Yeah.
Certainly he sends agents to kill with blood and cheese. But the thing is, those aren't his agents. He contacts Mysaria and says, hey, can we do this? And Mysaria sends the agents to kill those poor kids. Or one kid, whatever. And so I don't know that Daemon has those kind of connections to send agents to murder ladies of high status. So I'm a little skeptical about that, but it's another thing you can't rule out. It's possible, but I say no to him doing it in the book.
Yes to him doing it in the show.
Yeah, it's hard to get around that. Even if you think it wasn't his initial intent when he got there. Yeah. He did it. Yeah. So.
Yeah. The more I think about it too, the more like we've had multiple people suggest the idea that Daemon knew that the smell of dragon would startle the horse, and the more strongly I feel that would be the case, because I think Daemon would be well aware that horses shy away from the smell of him after he gets off a dragon.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. Yeah, and the other thing is that he's wearing his big cloak and everything, which is more
That's
clothing
already,
to have more dragon stink on him. Maybe I don't know. Yeah, it's definitely possible. Yeah. I like that idea. Too. Liam Gabsy says, do you think Blood and Cheese would be a great season ender or a great season opener? Well, I think it'd be pretty amazing either way. It's going to be savage, but I think it's going to start next season. I think it'll be the opener. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, season 2, episode 1, maybe at the latest episode 2, but probably episode 1.
In part because of the logistics of casting. Like they won't, by waiting till next season, they can avoid casting some of the characters that are crucial to that scene. Like Blood and Cheese themselves.
Yeah.
Or even, they haven't brought in Jaehaerys and Jaehaera yet, those kids. Like, they could wait on them potentially, or just have them be little babies and barely be seen the rest of the season, like Helena has barely been seen.
Yeah.
I probably will see more of Helena this year because we're going to see plenty of Aemond. But anyway,
we know there'll be a teen Helena and then an adult Helena, so we have 2 Helenas left to see.
So I think the season ender is Vhagar Arax, the thing that sets up Blood and Cheese.
Storm's End, yes.
Yeah, which was set up with the Blackwood Bracken fight there, which will resemble it in a lot of... Actually, I have a great new catch on that. I've been re-listening to Fire and Blood like constantly for the things like that. What does Geralt say to get Blackwood to finally turn around? He calls him a craven. And he pulls out his sword. He's like, "Gah." That's what Maris Baratheon says to Aemon to get to egg Aemon on to this conflict. Maris is like, "Oh, I'm glad you didn't pick me. I want a whole man." And you he take your balls or something?
Yeah.
He's like, "Are you a craven?" So she calls him a craven, and that's what gets Aemon to pursue Luke for his revenge.
It's the Back to the Future style thing, right?
What's that? Oh,
it's the Back to the Future style of you calling me yellow, you calling me a coward, you calling me a craven, whatever. No matter what movie, no matter what scenario, Marty McFly deals with someone calling him a coward, and he just can't let it lie, even though that would be the best scenario. It's just, yeah, sure, I'm a coward, ignore it, but he cannot, and that's what happens here. I'm going to have to edit some and make a meme of that when that happens eventually, perhaps.
Sandy Hartcorn says, the rats are great on 3 levels. Gray Rat Maester foreshadowing, number 1. 2, giving a reason to hire a rat catcher, number 2. 3, can show activity in the Red Keep secret tunnels, stirring them from their usual spot. Good points, yeah. We brought up the rat catcher thing. That's what Cheese is. He's a rat catcher, which, of course, leads to there being no rat catchers, which is why there's cats in the era later when Arya is at the Red Keep chasing cats, because the cats, of course, it's Otto Hightower that replaces the rat catchers with cats, I believe. So another reason to actually give Otto a few points. He's a cat guy. Yeah, good job, Otto.
You're right there. I can't fault Otto for introducing cats to the Red Keep because that is a net positive.
Yeah, you got to give Otto credit for that one. He's the reason there's cats in the Red Keep. Or you could give credit to Daemon and Mazzaria because they're the ones that really triggered it.
Thanks for all the cats.
But and of course the Grey Rat Maester foreshadowing is really good. That keeps that theory alive. It gives that little juice, a little energy, a little boost. And I didn't think of the actual hiring the rat catcher. I thought of how that was foreshadowing for that being a plot point, but actually
maybe that's why they need
it being needed.
Yeah,
that I didn't think of.
Yeah, and we talked about it. We did talk about that in a previous.
I kind of assumed they were already in their employ, but I guess you're right. Maybe they weren't.
I think it's that they don't have any rat catchers employed right now.
Becoming like the Master Whispers, where maybe isn't an official position yet. It's something that they've used, but isn't like a seat at the council yet. Maybe Larys is the first official Master Whispers. They don't have an official rat catcher until Kizzy sends a super chat and says, have you guys seen the scene they just released? I think from next week, Alicent summoning Rey right after birth to see the child. That is cold as ice. Yeah, that is cold as ice. Making her walk up those stairs, making a woman who just gave birth have to walk to see you and present your child. I'm not defending Alicent here, of course, but I think part of the reason is here that this is her 3rd child, and Alicent's like, is this one also going to look like a Strong? And she wants to just...
Yeah, I mean, Alicent could go see it herself then.
Yes, absolutely. So that's
why you're not excusing this, but that is the reasoning, is that Alicent is like, well, I really like the idea of Rhaenyra just get some silver paint, just
spray paints the kid's hair. It's he'll grow out of it. Yeah. So now what's important there too is, let me reference a question a little later on. I had saved this one, so I need a second to find it.
Yeah.
But it refers to this.
I'll say that, look at Laenor. He's got some nice, better hair. Some people complain about mid-Laenor's wig, but I think older Laenor has some great looking hair right here.
So we referenced, he really does. That's a handsome man right there.
Oh.
We talked about how some people talked about how the issue of Joffrey being killed and how it's kind of unfortunate that this gay character's killed as soon as he's introduced and all that.
Yeah.
Of course, Laenor, being who he is, will have no trouble finding another lover.
That's true. Whether he does or not, but yeah.
Yeah, and we're pretty sure he will, given Fire and Blood, but we'll see. But Joffrey's story isn't over. There is a footnote, and it's interesting how this comes right to the scene. That is baby Joffrey. this baby that we see in that scene. This is the third born. Luke and Jace are already around at this point. So that is Joffrey, named after Joffrey Lonmouth. And remember, in Fire and Blood, he wanted the firstborn to be Joffrey. He wanted the secondborn to be Joffrey, and they're finally like, okay, you can have the thirdborn be Joffrey. He wanted that to be the first one. But even like Corlys was like, no Joffrey for the first kid. We need a Valyrian name. He's gonna sit the throne.
Yeah.
And all that. No Joffrey, you know. Yeah. But you can have a Joffrey
not
later.
Not the spare either, but after the heir and the spare, now we'll have a Joffrey.
And they didn't have as good a reason.
But it works out well that this is when they're gonna do this time jump straight from Joffrey's death to Joffrey's birth.
Yeah, so that's kind of a neat. So that does actually emphasize the importance of this character a lot more. So I think maybe that's something that some folks will appreciate as a bit of a pushback against the pain of that moment. It's like, well, they're not just dropping the story. Like, he's getting remembered, and this character is going to exist for a while, even though Joffrey also has a tragic end. Most of these characters do. So, hey, what are you going to
do? Which that is where I get to with it, is like, everyone's going to die.
Yeah.
Let's not...
Let me now scroll back to where I was.
Oh, yes. We were at mid-roll.
Yeah. Okay, so Ryan Beagles pushes back a little bit against the point I made regarding Rhaenyra being excited to be recognized as a boy, and how we compared that to Arya. Ryan points out that Arya didn't like being called a boy, whereas Rhaenyra does. Arya wants to do things that are traditionally boy things. But she doesn't, she's still a girl, and she doesn't have any, like, confusion about that, right? Yeah. She's a girl, and she just does things that are traditionally associated with boys. Whereas Rhaenyra, you get the sense that, kind of like Cersei, she might want to be a man, because then she would be respected as the heir that she is, and she would get the treatment she knows she deserves.
Yeah, whereas Arya doesn't have much of that sense that she actually wants to be a man.
Yeah, she doesn't have that gender conflict where Rhaenyra kind of does. She's like, well, if I was a man, then they wouldn't be messing with me. Just like she wouldn't be asking Kristen like, will the realm accept me? She would be like, of course the realm will accept me. I'm a man. They always accept.
Her lover wouldn't have been like, give up your heir spot and run away with, her lover would have just been, okay, this is my lot in life.
Yeah. So that's a really important point. Thank you, Ryan Beagles, for that one. Good call. Very good clarification there. Donnie Stotts says, are we sure that Lady Mysaria, and she says, he calls him Lady Miz, which I like that.
Les Miz,
Lady Miz. Yeah. And Otto, are we sure they weren't already working together? Maybe the Prince for a Day comment was a communication between those two. Do we know how Otto got that info? Obviously, lots of people were there, but can we rule her out? No, we definitely can't.
We cannot rule her out.
She could have been, they may have been what got her started on, look, this information is very valuable. I could make money off secrets than the skin trade, as she put it.
There's that there's that conversation. There's the actual example we have where she did feed Otto information, and there's been one I've seen people talk about on Twitter, which is that Daemon, when talking in the small council to Otto and others, he makes his joke about Rhea being the sheep being prettier than Rhea, than the women in the Vale, and then later Rhea repeats that. In my opinion, that isn't a case of Otto disseminating weird gossip about Daemon. Daemon just said that in a bunch of public places, but you could choose to look at that as an example of Otto sharing information about Daemon.
And I think part of the reason Daemon did that, as an aside, and this relates to the ED comments, is that he's trying to keep that under wraps. Like, he was like, oh, why you're not, because normally it's in Westeros, if you don't have children, it's a lot of times it's the man's fault. They'll say, "Oh, you're not man enough to father children." So he's like preempting this talk about that would lead to him being less of a man.
Her. Yeah, of course.
So he's blaming her.
Yeah, he's blaming her, and then you get a look at her, and you're like, she's beautiful.
Yeah, she's pretty.
She's
like,
very,
what are you
very
about,
beautiful.
Man?
But no, you when you put yourself into that scenario of it's their wedding night, Daemon said something rude or did something, they go to bed, and she's not immediately amenable. He feels weird about the whole thing and can't get it up. Even then, she makes a joke, she laughs, she does something that is not the right reaction for him then, and then it's just done. Like, he never wants to try again.
He's just too ashamed. He never, and he's like, and so then he makes up these stories about
he says those jokes.
That harsh environment, and the women look like sheep and all that stuff. It's like, those must be some good-looking sheep.
Yeah, I know. We really just,
So, yeah, good call, Donnie. Yeah, absolutely. Otto and Lady Mysaria could have been working together sooner, and we might find that out. Because if Otto returns to King's Landing? Is he going to reconnect with her and find that that's going to backfire because she'll also be working with Daemon? And I really want to see about that. Is Daemon going too far when he reveals the secret passages? He's the one who knows about the secret passages. So far, he's the only one that's shown proficiency with the secrets of the Red Keep.
Yeah.
So in order to facilitate the blood versus cheese assassination, he's going to have to tell her about those passages, and that opens a lot of potential for future villainy or at least spying or whatever. And that might be, so that would be an example of Mysaria backfiring on Otto, perhaps, in this sense. Yeah. Lynn S. says, the ruby crown is interesting as it reflects the fire and blood theme, and big square-cut rubies keep showing up in the books. Rhaegar's rubies, Melisandre's ruby, and Illyrio has given Aegon a collar with 3 square-cut rubies as well. That's, of course, Phaegon, young Griff. They seem to be a jewel that can concentrate or enhance fire magic, in particular glamour. So I wonder if Illyrio has something up his sleeve. I'll be curious to see if Rhaegar's armor has fallen into Illyrio's hands and possibly been reworked with spells by Tabho Mat. Renly's armor as well comes to mind. Now, I'm not trying to get too much into a Song of Ice and Fire theories. It's a little off topic, but we are going to see Aegon's crown really soon. And given that the show has pushed upwards the fantasy supernatural elements rather than flattened them like the original show did, I would not be against seeing some reference to that, of the power of rubies, some sort of vagueness associated with that, if not just like outright comments about it, like, yeah, well, our family believed that rubies could do this and that, and so they're used for this and that. And yeah, I think there's a chance we get into that. I don't think, and that may eventually enable us to speculate more on things like Illyrio and other things like that. Right now, it's a cool idea, but I'm not sure what to do with it. But I do like bringing it up because, the show might do something with that. I wouldn't have guessed that before. I wouldn't have guessed that Aegon's prophecy would be a part of the show. I'm very pleased to see that it is, considering that they're handling it well. That is,
Yeah.
Moby Dick of dopeness, not of openness. That's a cool name, Moby Dick of dopeness. Says, what I find interesting is how quickly everyone jumps to Viserys is a bad king comments. I agree, he comes across as weak and he's quick to throw bad news aside to keep things jovial, but he's been a king for a good while and no great tragedies have befallen his kingdom, no major wars, no major famines. He's brought the greatest disgruntled house back into the fold and kept the rest there. No one's complaining that the realm is starving or anything of the sort. If it weren't for how he handled his succession, he'd be remembered as a shorter-lived Jaehaerys. Frankly, the only reason the realm is in position to start a war over succession is, like Rhaenyra said in the first episode. Rhaenys had said in the first episode, things have been peaceful for so long. Everyone is just sort of itching for the chance to prove themselves in battle. Nearly a century of peace is everyone bored and looking for a reason to war. I sort of agree with what you're saying there, Moby Dick of dopeness, but I think that it's the old example of if you're a business and you need a loan, the best time to ask for a loan is when you're doing well. Banks will not loan you money to save your ass. They'll loan you money to when you're doing well because they see it as an opportunity for themselves. It's kind of a similar line of thinking. When things are at their best, that's the time to improve things, to prepare for the bad times, to worry about what could come, because there's no chance that it will always stay good forever. When you're at your best is the best time to prepare. And he's not really doing that. He's not like building roads or like, that's why Jaehaerys is remembered. He ended the bad times, and then he and his staff, I give his staff more credit for making the advancements, for the things that facilitated future peace, while I give Jaehaerys full credit for being the one to create peace in the first place. But I think it's more Alysanne and Barth that did were the more forward thinkers in that regard. But either way, whoever you give credit to, I don't see these things happening under Viserys. I don't see him using the great position they're in to improve the realm.
Yeah, he's reaping the benefits of everything in the previous. That's why his reign is relatively, very peaceful, is because of what Jaehaerys, Alysanne, and Barth did, not because of what Viserys did.
Yeah, he's kind of riding their coattails still. And yes, it's true, he hasn't been tested in the sense that there's these awful things have happened for him to respond to. But he's kind of failed the test of what to do when things are good. He hasn't.
Yeah, I wouldn't call him a bad king myself. I just call him a mediocre king.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
For me personally, I know some people are calling him a bad king.
The bar's pretty low.
I think of him as a mediocre king and a mediocre father, and just like a mediocre person raising an heir.
He's a better man than a king.
Yeah, and I think he's a decent man. I don't think he's a mediocre man.
Yeah,
I would agree with that. That he is, he's trying do decent. He's trying to do good. He's like, his intentions are for the most part pretty good.
Yeah, I don't think he's just that good at it. Like, again, he's not bad at it either.
He's also really sick as he's dealing with all this.
That's
you know,
true.
like it's. I have to imagine that weighs on him in addition to the weight of the prophecy, just like how we give Rhaenyra credit for like this weight on her. I have to imagine that it affects Viserys greatly as well.
Yeah, and of course he also has the weight of the prophecy, which is not a thing that we would have attributed to him having just read Fire and Blood. And that brings us to a comment from Geek Furious, who says, people seem to forget that pretty big thing in this adaptation of Fire and Blood, where Viserys has told Rhaenyra about the Song of Ice and Fire. That has to be on her mind at all times, too, unless they only decided to introduce it for connective reasons and we're not supposed to think she takes it seriously. As of now, I take it that this is on her mind. She has to be queen.
And that's regarding her, whether she accepts Kristen's offer to run away, that no, Rhaenyra is taking this very seriously as her responsibility.
Yeah, and that is a really important point, is not just to apply to Rhaenyra, but to apply to Viserys as well, that he's part of why he's a little more focused on things like the Second Age of Dragons, is he really wants to make sure Targaryen supremacy is maintained, because the prophecy says it needs to be. At least, or his interpretation of it, or his great-grandfather's.
And as audience members, we can see all the ways that he's failing, but I have to think that if we were in Worlds and didn't have all this information, I don't think that he would look like he was failing as obviously. Like, I think we might be like, oh, well, he made a deal with Corlys and Rhaenys, and Lionel was there to, like, he is thinking of the succession and trying to deal with it, but probably we're about to see in this next episode when he sees what Rhaenyra has wrought in terms of her legacy. A lot of people are going to like his stance, but I think a lot of other people are also going to be like, yeah, but like, that's nice in theory, but he has to recognize that the realm is not going to listen, and like he has to be, you know, honest with himself, and I don't think he is, right?
Yeah, I agree. Like, yeah, totally. From Mandit. Aegon's prophecy should not be interpreted as there must be a Targaryen on the throne to fight the others, but rather there will be. And the fact that Targaryens chose to interpret it as must be rather than will be kind of strengthens their sense of entitlement. That's not really a question, but it's I like that interpretation. It's because I'm looking for very simple ways that Aegon could have made it more about him or gotten it wrong. And that's a really good one, because it is simple and it's a really easy way to misinterpret, because it's dreams. Like, Aegon didn't dream of like text saying there must be a Targaryen, right? He didn't dream of like a contract. He dreamed of, I don't know.
He probably dreamed of like a final battle and there was a Targaryen on the throne. So he said, okay, well, we need to make sure that this prophecy happens. Whereas a different school of thought for prophecy would say, no, it's a prophecy. It's going to happen no matter what you do. So just live your life.
Yeah.
But no, I think it was very much a let's ensure that this happened.
Yeah, I like that call a lot. Thanks, Mandit. Good call. Alex Mule says all this sets up the Pact of Ice and Fire really well, the Aegon's dream. It adds to that theme or that plot line, which is in Fire and Blood, the Pact of Ice and Fire, the notion that Jace married Sarah Snow, like in a Rhaegar, Lyanna vibing sort of Rhaegar or you know, Danny John, or maybe there's a lot of different vibes there. Even Robb and Jane Westerling, because of the fact it would be a broken marriage pact to make that happen. So there's a lot of vibes there that fit other plot lines that we're very familiar with, and associating that with prophecy makes a lot of sense, given that they've set up the prophecy and emphasized it even more. I have to think that's definitely gonna be a part of it. Maybe Jace will tell Lord Cregan about it, or Sarah Snow.
Yeah, no, that's gonna be so exciting for everyone. Like, all the Stark stands are just like hibernating, as it were, during winter. But yeah, they are. They're just like ready. And season 2, episode 1's gonna happen, and we're probably gonna see Winterfell, I would guess, in the first or second episode, and be like, surprise! We're watching the show too. Stark stands activate.
Andy Coley says, what has been the biggest diversion from the source material in terms of book to show? It might be the prophecy stuff.
Yeah, you're right. It might be the prophecy stuff. I think for me, the answer is the difference in ages between Alicent and Rhaenyra, because it has a lot of like a butterfly effect type thing where it affects how Rhaenyra and Alicent's relationship is, but it also affects how Alicent and Viserys seem, how Viserys and Lena and Rhaenyra, like it has this effect on a lot of characters, not just the two characters, Alicent and Rhaenyra.
Yeah.
So I think for me, I would still say that, but the prophecy is a good one because it does have an effect on Viserys and Rhaenyra and conceivably eventually Daemon and Rhaenyra's children. You know, it has an effect on a number of characters beyond, but I don't think it has an effect on quite as many characters.
I think another one that occurs to me is changing the Great Council a little bit to make it Rhaenys and Viserys rather than Rhaenys or Laenor and Viserys.
Yeah.
Rhaenys' son and Viserys is how it was originally planned. So that makes a big deal because it really more emphasizes the patriarchy aspect of it and that the realm is against a woman, which
and
of
also,
course sets up that conflict a little better.
All three of these changes, I'm very much in favor of. Very pro. I think changes. They were for the best.
They worked out.
They added a lot of like thematic resonance in the case of the Rhaenys change, or they added a greater emotional richness and depth in the case of the Alicent Rhaenyra ages, or so on. So no, I think that, or in the prophecy as well, which that also did the trick of catching the eye of a lot of fans who were like, oh, what is this now? And that captured imaginations, but it also has such great meaning for the characters themselves more significantly. So no, I'm super on board with the major changes that they've made. I really, there haven't been many changes that I'm like about. I would like to have seen more of Laena and Vhagar. That's my big criticism as of now, and that's really just I want more of the good stuff you're giving me.
Related to that, Ashton Johnson, shout out Fox and Brambles. What's something you wish we could have seen that we didn't? Well, something we really almost saw that didn't see was Laena getting Vhagar.
Yeah, because that was a deleted scene that was cut apparently.
Yeah, so we might actually see it if it's released as a extra.
Yeah, we might see it. So we can hope so. That would be my something that I wish we could have seen. And the other things that I really want to see, we wouldn't have seen yet anyway. So it remains to be seen if they keep, for example, I care a lot about seeing Gaiman Palehair and his mother's Essie and Sylvana Sand. That's a very important plot line to me in the books. One of my favorites. I would be very sad if we don't see it, but I do recognize that we might not see it. So we'll see.
Yeah. As far as another one, maybe Mushroom. But we still might see him. That's not a big one.
And there's and you can choose to believe that the drummer guy at the feast was Mushroom, which is a nice way to play it. I think that if you want to believe that Mushroom's around doing stuff, you could choose to believe that was him, and I don't think anything could go wrong with choosing that. One
small scene that we're hoping to get. Ashton also asked this. I'm related to Mushroom. Maybe it's because I'm thinking of Mushroom. I'm really hoping we get the pants on fire moment, because you all know the phrase liar, liar, pants on fire. Well, there's a liar, liar, pants on fire in Fire and Blood where Mushroom says that he tried to mount one of the dragons during the Dragon Seeds saga, and he describes getting his pants getting caught on fire and have to jump into a well. So I'm like, liar, liar, pants on fire. You did not do that, Mushroom. I don't think you tried to mount a dragon.
Although, but if he was there and gets lit on fire a little bit, then that would be another fun way to throw in a Mushroom nod. There's certainly plenty of chances for them to continue. I think that would be cool, is if in any chance they had, they threw in a dwarf in the background there, so that you could be is that Mushroom or is that you could have
do the Leonardo,
6 different you could have 6 different Mushroom possibilities. That would be pretty cool to me.
And remember that, who is it that says that fancies and tall tales or rumors sprout like mushrooms after a rain? Yeah. Yeah. I'd love someone to say that line in lieu of full mushroom coverage. Okay. Lucas Parham says, do you think it will be harder to believe that people were fooled by the Strong Kids' parentage due to the show depiction of the Velaryons? Yeah, I think that's a big part of why they made the Velaryons black. It's a whole lot harder to be this kid is brown-haired and white.
Laenor's pretty light-skinned, but he's still got very textured hair.
Yeah.
And silver hair, more importantly than any of the...
the hair is the most telling, because they both have silver hair.
Both have silver hair. So, but I think that's the point, is that people aren't fooled. There's no, it's not harder to believe that people were fooled. It's
it's an open secret.
It's an open secret. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's the deal.
Sort of Joffrey and Myrcella and Tommen. Less so, because that's more believable. given like they just all look like Lannisters, you know, and it takes Ned Stark looking at the book to be like, all other Baratheon Lannister matches were the Baratheon hair came out,
So yeah, like it is a stretch for them to ever believe that even one of these boys came from Laenor and Rhaenyra just because of the brown hair, right?
Yeah, that's why you have to have lots of them to have the sample size is bigger,
yeah, and so like when there's 3 of them, there's like this is damning. There's no way that this was the 3 of them because like without like I thought for sure that they were gonna have like Emma Arryn have brown hair. I thought they were gonna have someone in the history have brown hair because we don't even have Rhaenys, and that's where I think the bigger flaw is personally, not in Black Valarians, but in not having brunette Rhaenys. I think that if she had brown hair, they would have had an out. Where they could have said, oh, they take after their grandmother, Rhaenys, or something like that. But they clearly chose not to do that on purpose, which points to me that they wanted there to not be an out.
They want no out, yeah. They want it to be obvious.
Yeah, that's why they changed Rhaenys' hair.
I agree. That is why they changed Rhaenys' hair, totally.
I prefer the other way. I prefer the idea that there is an out. Personally, like I want there to be like an out, and everyone's like, "Come on, like really?"
Would that be an out though? I mean, if they made her brunette, they would. But she's supposed to have black hair in canon.
Yeah, black hair, and they have brown black hair. Like to me, that's close enough to have dark hair and silver hair. That's enough of an out that you can try to argue like they take after their grandmother, and everyone will be like, "Okay, not really, but good, nice try."
Yeah.
Whereas now they just literally don't have any out, really, in my opinion. I don't know what their excuse is other than we're not even going to justify that with an answer. We won't even give you an excuse.
Yeah.
Which is valid, and that's kind of what Alicent gets into. She's like, this is an insult. This is offensive. There's no covering this up. This like she's not doing her duty. And so I don't know. We'll see how it actually plays out, sure. But I think it works. I think it works for sure.
I think it's great. Yeah, it's a really good change. It makes it more visible. Like, and they couldn't do the purple eyes because the first show already ditched the purple eyes, and it wouldn't be very visible anyway. Like you got to zoom in on the baby's eyes. It's really obvious what you're doing. You know, like just to show the kid doesn't have purple eyes. Yeah, it's just not. And even amongst Targaryen marriages, kids occasionally come out without purple eyes. So that's just not as reliable anyway, for multiple reasons. So yeah, this change makes a lot of sense. Speaking of relationships and Emma Arryn, it's important to note as well that Lady Jane Arryn is Rhaenyra's cousin because she's unspecified relationship to Emma Arryn. They're both
probably
Arryns.
Emma. I'm guessing that like her niece or something. That like they're cousins.
Yeah. Either way, they're related. So
like when we were making the jokes about Rhaenyra saying Daemon was her favorite uncle, and they were like, well, technically Gawain Hightower is like her uncle. I think my guess is that she also has an Arryn uncle on her mother's side.
Yeah,
personally.
So, let's see here. Daemon and Rhea, though we covered the idea that the dragon smell was important there. That's in the notes here. But what about Kristen Bowers-White, who says, what do you think of the show's choice to portray Daemon as more of a villain than morally gray? Well,
I don't agree with that. Yeah. I think he looks like less of a villain and more morally gray in the show than in the book to me.
Yeah, I think he comes off as pretty villainous in the book already.
Yeah, like to me in the book, Daemon was a villain. That like it was not very gray, despite people saying he was gray. I was like, well, if I'm reading what's on the text, he doesn't seem that gray to me. But in retrospect, seeing their portrayal of him on the show and comparing it to certain sections of Fire and Blood, like sections where it brings up how Daemon, defended Viserys' right to be king or him as ruler or whatever. There's certain lines where I'm like, yeah, I guess like I can extrapolate there that there is more complexity going on. So no, I don't think that he's more of a villain in the show.
I think you can make the argument. I see where she's coming from because the murders he sets up and things like that are more clear that he did such a thing. Yeah. Right? It's more clear. And like he's doing a few things that we don't know for sure happened in the book that we now know he definitely did in the show. So maybe that's part of what she's saying.
Whereas I guess I just thought he did it in the books. Like I have to say, when you said the thing about Rhea Royce and how he was in the Stepstones, in my head, I was like Ryan Condal.
Yeah, because Ryan Condal was like, oh, he did it.
Yeah, in my head, it was an oh, he did it thing too. I assumed that Daemon sent someone to deal with that. That was mine. I'm not a Daemon stan, so I really didn't put much thought into like, well, what do I think Daemon did really? I just thought the worst of him. I did. So yeah, I think he comes off better to me, but I see how some people he comes off worse. I do.
Right on. Robert S. says, longtime listener, love your shows. I'm writing regarding King of the Narrow Sea. The episode was awesome, but one scene stood out to me. While Rhaenyra and Daemon are in the city, the fortune teller asked her if she wants to know about the day she will die, and following there was a fire dragon breathing fire, like one of those little statue things. That scene was just awesome for foreshadowing. Small details like that make the show awesome. Absolutely. You're right. Sean even noticed that, and he doesn't know what's going to happen, so we just had to be like, that's right, Sean. Okay, that's a good observation. But we're like, you're exactly right. That is how she's going to die. And I totally agree that small details do help make this show really awesome because we as book readers appreciate that. We see those things. We probably have missed several because they seem to be very good at including these, at taking single lines from Fire and Blood and putting them in. And using them really efficiently, effectively, without making a big deal out of it, but it just slides right in nicely. Yeah, a good example is just there's a ton of setup for Blood and Cheese, as we've already talked about during this episode. Yeah. But it's not all just Blood and Cheese foreshadowing. It's setting up other things like the gray rats for the Maesters. It's like a double meaning, which George is really good at. So I appreciate that they're also using a lot of double meanings, multiple overlaps, theories, things like that. Returning to Kristen Cole. Good catch by our friend Nobody Suspects the Butterfly. Check them out on Tumblr.
Yes, also at ASOF University.
Yeah, ASOF University, that's her. Kristen's later line in Fire and Blood is, they will turn the Red Keep into a brothel. No man's daughter will be safe, nor any man's wife, even the boys. We know what Laenor was. This sounds very much like Kristen Cole is homophobic.
Yeah.
That
whether he was at that moment or just a light uncomfortable, he might have just been uncomfortable, but I think he might have solidified into it.
That gives you a little extra setup for why he beat up Joffrey. Quite possibly this may have been on his mind. He may have just, obviously it's not just this.
No. Yeah, to be clear, we're not saying that, this was a hate crime from Kristen Cole. I think what we are saying is that Kristen was about to implode already. He's torn up about this den of sin that he's a part of and how terrible it is, and then this guy comes over to him and brings up how he's in a gay relationship with his lover's new husband, and that compounds things to be like, oh, I'm really in it now, whether consciously or not. I don't think that Kristen was like, oh, I'm gonna get this gay guy, but I do think that he was like, oh, this is even worse, and now I'm involved in this. And so then when it comes time to justify things to himself just as much as to anyone else, if he's like, oh, well, these were sinners, that's an easy way to make it so that you don't just want to kill yourself for killing someone else.
Yeah.
And that's not me saying that that's a good thing for him to do.
Right. It's just an explanation.
I'm saying that's how someone justifies terrible violence to themselves, is this is wrong for them to do that.
And he knows, as we pointed out, he was thinking perhaps his own life was forfeit. He goes to kill himself and is only stopped by Alicent at the last minute. Some good discussion I saw on Twitter. I believe a couple people were talking about it, but I think it was Poor Quentin, Emmett Booth, who we had on for our prediction episode earlier. He points out that maybe some of this is self-loathing. He saw Joffrey as a mirror. This is a lover to the king consort, and I'm the so-called lover to the queen, the person who will be queen. And he sees a lot of himself in that, and he hates it because he's like, I don't want to be that. And so he wants to kill himself. He also wants to kill this other person who is kind of like a mirror image of him. And that fits, and especially if you add the other aspects of him that he doesn't like.
I think All the Artsy has a great point here when they say, if Laenor's love was a woman, would he have beat her face into a pulp too? I don't think so.
No, you're totally right. It's a fantastic point. There's no way Kristen beats up a woman like that in public. I mean, I don't know that he would do it anyway, but definitely not at the wedding celebration. Even he wouldn't.
No, I don't think he would have flipped
temper that much, because that's part of how he's been taught. You don't beat up women. That's a sin too.
Yeah.
So
I think that's a great point, that I don't think he would have flipped in that same way.
That's a really good point. Yeah. Even if it was
which is again, rooted in the sex, the gender of it, and not so much in the queerness of it exactly. But it's so inextricable. You can't really separate the two things from one another. So I'll be curious if Kristen makes homophobic comments going forward in the show.
Certainly make people flee from praising him quickly.
Yeah, I think it will.
I'll be like, never mind, I'm not a fan of him anymore.
Yeah.
I think that'll probably happen anyway. But
I agree.
It would be really quick if that happened. Yeah, if he says that line in episode 9, people are going to be like, whoa.
And again, if we're thinking that Alicent is going to be a bit more deep into the religious side of things, then that might be an angle that she takes too.
Anything to push against her enemy.
Yeah, and anything that's like, she's like, this is immoral, this is whatever.
Even if she didn't go into all of this believing that being gay is immoral, she may decide to push that angle because her enemy is doing it. Yeah. Exactly. I think that makes a lot of sense. It's not inborn homophobia. It's I can leverage this for support. Yeah.
It's that. Yes, agreed.
It's more cynical homophobia rather than like true homophobia. Thea M says another great parallel between Mysaria and Kristen. Both are common folk at the mercy of power players. The difference is that Mysaria, they both get kind of screwed over, but the difference is Mysaria has enough brains to not be resentful and instead uses the situation to her advantage, while Kristen just, as Thea puts it, will be crushed under the wheel and let his resentment wreck him. That's a good way to put it. Let his resentment wreck him. Kristen has the, quote, liberation that Mysaria wanted, as proven by what he's gotten away with, right? That's part of it. Like, Kristen was brought into the Kingsguard. It's like, the Kingsguard is like the Secret Service. More on that in a minute. Where you do have insulation from your own violence because if you are really high up in the authority figure level, you're not making policy, you're not passing laws, but you have a lot of leeway to dispense violence and get away with it because of your role.
It's kind of like if the Kingsguard does something, he must have been righteous to do it.
Yeah. Right. It's very much like that. It's like what Richard Nixon said is like, if the president does it, then by definition, it's not illegal. Right? That's what Kristen, just picture Kristen saying that, or Alicent saying that on his behalf, or Otto saying that.
If the Kingsguard did it, he must have had a good reason that, he clearly pulled a knife and he was jealous over his love Laenor getting married to Rhaenyra. And whatever argument they can make, it's really easy to justify a Kingsguard committing violence on behalf of the crown, conceivably.
Yeah, so more on that in just a sec. I want to jump back to Thea's point real quick, which is really good. Yeah, like it's how they react to being made into a quote-unquote whore defines them. Like, Mysaria like, I was fine with that because it was working for me. It's good, I could use that, and she used that to move higher up in the world. Kristen's just, he can't. That is not for him. Yeah, he's like, I am not accepting this. So she's right to point at that. How they react to this is crucial, but they did start in kind of a similar-ish place, despite their separation in gender. And of course, Kristen has martial prowess, which goes a long way in Westeros. Mysaria doesn't have that kind of thing, but she did still find her way. Like, selling secrets is talk about making yourself useful.
No.
But more on Kristen Cole and how he escapes punishment. This is an important topic. I'm actually writing an episode for In Deep Geek on that. We've been doing that pretty regular these days, and I think that'll be a good short topic. Now, okay, so we brought up I brought up the Secret Service, the U.S. Secret Service, for example. They're the ones tasked with protecting the president, so I think it's a pretty good analogy. We just had a Secret Service scandal where they did stuff in the U.S. they weren't supposed to do. They deleted some messages. And it doesn't look like any of them are going to get punished at all for it. You know, the Praetorian Guard, the Emperor's personal guard in Rome, they got so bad that they literally killed emperors and auctioned off the spot for the next emperor, and no one could stop them, because if you are like, I'm the new emperor and I'm going to push back against the Praetorian Guard, they're going to kill you again. So, like, this is obviously way stronger than the Kingsguard has ever been, but it just goes to show that the violence dispensers within an administration have way more leeway than we have. We have to keep that in mind. Again, to use the real world, an authority figure getting away with violence is very normal. Like, that's sad but true. Like, cops get away with stuff all the time, right? You know, there's good cops out there, but there's plenty of bad ones that just do awful things, and there's very little punishment for it. And that's not just police. All sorts of authority figures throughout history.
Doctors do bad things.
Doctors,
like,
yeah.
whatever.
People
like,
in authority.
know,
authority. You're right. No need to point to police specifically, but they're a good example. But also it's who's got your back. Jaime got away with killing the king on the Kingsguard, and you could say, okay, well, yeah, but that's because he was married to, or he's his family connection.
And there was
Cersei's influence over Robert.
And there was an administration change.
There was an administration change here. That's the only thing missing from this scenario. There's no administration change, but you still have the same thing. Cersei's influence over Robert is why Jaime got away with it. Alicent's influence over Viserys is crucial here. Alicent has reached out to Kristen, made him hers. Like, I saved your life twice now, Kristen. He's going to be like super loyal to her. And she wants to make sure he stays that way and is in a position to be super loyal to her and her children. So she's going to use her influence as queen to be like, yeah, he gets away with this. And there you go. The powers that be want him to get away with it.
I'm like, scenario, I get why people are like, why didn't anyone stop him as he left or whatever? Probably they didn't want to get beat the hell up too.
Yeah, that's
like,
a dangerous man.
It's a dangerous man. Just let him go. We'll collect him in a minute.
Yeah, it's a matter of who's going to stop him.
Yeah, who's going to choose to
The other
stop him?
Kingsguard?
Like Harold Westerling, what's he doing? That's the person I really want to hear from in this scenario is
same.
Harold Westerling, personally. But in my headcanon, because again, I don't expect us to get some flashback or some conversation where they say, oh, remember 10 years ago, the night of Joffrey's death? Well, you argued this and I argued this. I don't really think that. In my head, this fight happened, and immediately afterwards, Viserys is like, what's going on here? And Rhaenyra and Alicent were like, don't harm Sir Criston. And then, like, pretty quickly, Rhaenyra realized, oh, Criston is not on my side after all, and, like, she sides with Rhaenor long term. But all it takes is if in that very night, when Criston would have had justice dispensed, 2 people, then 3 people, because Harold too, or like multiple people, stand for him.
And Viserys, as we know, is more likely to want to sweep it under the rug than make a big deal out of it. Especially in his current state of hell. He does not want to deal with things like that, especially if he doesn't realize what's really going on. Which he
so
doesn't.
I think if, assuming that it's possible that, Corlys and Rhaenys and Laenor pushed really hard for justice and that this was a conflict, but it's also possible that in the moment, Corlys and Rhaenys did not want to bring eyes to the fact that their son's gay lover was just killed.
Yep.
And they didn't want a he said, she said situation, or he said, really.
They have to explain why it's such a big deal that guy, why it's such a big deal to Laenor, to the royal family. Why is it such a big deal that this particular knight was killed? Then that asks questions about, you're totally right. Then he'd be like, well, he was Laenor's lover. And like, they don't want to, you're right. They don't want to spill that.
And then, there's an argument to be said like, well, Criston punched Laenor too. That was very much in the heat of things that for people to, again, just think about what the accusation and what the demands would be and how they say it. Do you really think that Corlys and Rhaenys and Laenor want to be like, oh, well, he punched the prince consort, the future king?
Yeah.
Like, Laenor couldn't stop this guy. Like, that doesn't look good for Laenor either.
Makes
in
him
perception.
Look weak.
It makes him look weak.
Like, you're all this mad over one punch? Like, he's a knight and fought in the Stepstones. He's a dragon rider. Which he's supposed to wilt over just one punch to the face?
Yeah, he couldn't stop.
He
So like, I can see why they might not have been like, let's not make this a huge public discourse across, everyone talking about this. Let's maybe move on from this. Is what I expect from it. But I also really don't expect us to get a blow by blow of what this conversation will have been.
Also, and technically, he wasn't yet king consort. He was
that's true.
Be king consort. He wasn't actually technically married yet.
They weren't married yet when he got punched. That is true.
So he that's a good, like, the legal argument. We're going into the legalese. That's what that's what the defense lawyer would say. Technically, he was not king consort at the time he was struck.
And also true that, like, Rhaenys and Corlys didn't necessarily see Laenor get struck. Did Laenor bring it up to someone that it was Criston? Like, in the heat of the battle, anyone could have punched Laenor, right? Who saw what? Who's reporting on what? We just don't know enough to be like, this is a clear plot hole that they don't do the thing. My point here is that if you can try to, like, sit for a minute and imagine how things could have gone down for this to not be a plot hole for you personally, I encourage you to do that, like, imaginative activity for yourself, for your own mental health, because I know some people really think that this pulled them out of it, and I don't think it has to.
Yeah. And remember as well that ambiguity, like in a modern court of law, ambiguity is always on the side of the defense. Like, because you have to, especially in like a U.S. court of law or any court system that uses innocent before proven guilty.
Now, this is nothing like a modern court of law.
It's not, but it focuses the same way. The ambiguity still works in Criston Cole's favor severely. Yeah. So there's ambiguity and there's the reasons they want to keep it quiet. So there's a lot of reasons there that he could get away with it. I think there's a lot.
Yeah, you can choose to go with a mixture of all those reasons or one or whatever you want to believe, to be honest. I've justified it in my mind, and it is something that in my head, a little time spent on this conversation would be good, but that's a really hard and potentially boring scene to try to script out and squeeze in and balance for them to hash this all out, whereas you can just pretend you figured out what happened. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this next episode we're gonna see a conversation where they say, you argued this and you argued. Maybe we will get more into it. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. Lucas Parham says, since the super chat says, the first men's seed is stronger than Valyrian. Lyanna beat Rhaegar and the Strong Stark cousin. Also won out. Another L for Valyria. Yeah.
That's
old
true.
God, hashtag old gods for the win. Can't argue with that, Lucas.
I agree.
Those are all facts right there. Yeah, it's a big what if. Like, what if Jon looked like a Targaryen? Yeah, they would have had to handle that entirely differently.
He would not have. Yeah, it would have been very different. I don't think Ned would have just taken him up north with him.
You're gonna send him to Lys or something. Like.
Yeah, it probably would. That probably would have been what he had to do, because he can't just keep shaving or dyeing his hair, especially if it's colored eye. Like, that's what would have had to happen. Is Ned would not have taken that child home with him. He would have found someone to raise him away. Maybe like he would have been like, okay, Roderick.
Promise me, Ned.
Something.
Nah, I'm not gonna promise you. If this kid had black hair, though, I would promise you. Bluebird and a lot of other y'all have wanted us to talk a little bit about or make references to Kristen Cole's offer as compared to some other similar situations, vaguely similar or slightly similar or more than vaguely or slightly, like Jorah and Dany. Jorah says, hey, Dany, let's run off together and just go east and forget about all this throne business. Yeah, it is similar. But except that Dany isn't into Jorah at all. There is that problem with that. Is that flaw in the idea that Dany, like Rhaenyra, is into Kristen or was into Kristen.
Into him
there was never actually any romance. Well, it was unrequited. It was a one-sided love situation here. Also, it bears mention that Jorah, as much as I think he's loathsome, didn't just flip out and hate Dany for being rejected. He still stayed loyal to her, which is
because he knew he was wrong to ask it.
That's probably part of it.
Whereas Kristen felt like, well, of course she would be intrigued and interested in this answer. He really seemed like he really did not seem like he thought she was gonna say no.
He was really like, oh, surely she'll accept this. Yeah, he misread the situation.
In his head, he was like, this is how we'll both save our honor. Whereas Jorah's like, this is how I'll manage to be with you.
Yeah. And it's not like, it's also a little different in terms of the usurpation situation here as well, obviously with Dany and Jorah and the Iron Throne being is that Dany had never even set foot on mainland Westeros and all that, and the quest for the Iron Throne isn't actually a great idea maybe, but anyway, still, there's a lot of similarities in that situation. It's a very worthy comparison. The other major big difference is that, even as Jorah continues to be creepy, the idea that he would ever like turn on Dany and try to kill her or maybe her allies, maybe. He might try to kill like a Dario or something like that, but Kristen now wants to kill Rhaenyra's entire family. Like all of them, and that's arguably a lot worse.
I don't think that's I guess I don't see it as
that
him.
Aspect of it.
I wouldn't say I think Kristen is there in the show yet that we know.
Not yet. You're right. Not there.
Well, I don't know if he is, and I don't know if he will be truly there.
That's true. He might not be.
He might not. I don't want to kill the young. We might not be like, I want to kill these young boys, like these bastards. I don't know. I just want to not fall into the trap that we were talking about of putting fire and blood mindsets on ascribing them to a character yet when we just don't know.
That's fair. If it goes like fire and blood,
I think he'll be insulting for sure, but I just don't think Kristen will be like, I need to eradicate Rhaenyra's brood. Maybe he will be that ill-intended and that festered and gross and toxic. Maybe he will, but I feel like it won't be just he's immediately like kill all of Rhaenyra's gets. I don't know. Maybe he will.
Dany and Dario are a similar comparison of sorts. They have some things in common to this scenario. Dario being similarly dangerous in terms of his skills. Jorah as well, and Kristen. All those guys are really good fighters. They're all top notch. But with the relative inequality of their station as well, and the temptation in this case, it's unlike Jorah. Dany is actually tempted to stay with Dario because she does actually like him. She maybe doesn't love him, but she's very much into him. Maybe it's one of the things that would just pass. You're like, oh, this guy. Like after a year, I'm done with this guy. This is just a fling. Who knows? But either way, she does briefly consider, staying with him. She at least, maybe it's more of just like a fantasy in her mind. She doesn't actually consider doing it, but she just considers what it would be like. But still, Rhaenyra was not fantasizing about running off with Kristen Cole. Even for a second, she was like, wait, what? What is your idea here?
She was fantasizing about running off with Alicent Hightower.
Yeah. And Jorah was fine with being a side piece. He's like, the dragon has. I mean, of course, he kind of wanted to be like a dragon head. He was like, the dragon, they don't have. Blah, blah, blah. He was basically saying, look, if this has to be polygamous, I'm down with that. He's like, any way to get in that door, Jorah's willing. That's the opposite of Kristen, who's like, this is on my terms, we're not doing it. Jorah's like, I'll take anything. Also bears mention a couple of Targaryens, Duncan the Small, who actually did give up the throne for love. For Jenny of Old Stones, the Jenny of Old Stones, Jenny who would dance with her ghost. That Jenny, Duncan the Small, named for Duncan the Tall. He's the son of...
If he descended, he would have been Duncan the Big on the Iron Throne, but no.
Duncan Y'all. And yeah, so that's a really interesting story that we don't know a lot about. We just know that, but clearly he was really in love with Jenny. And it wasn't just hey, y'all, I quit. It was, you must marry a highborn girl. He's like, nah, I'm not doing that. I'm marrying Jenny. And they're like, well, then you have to not be king. And he's like, okay. All right, then. I mean, he may not have just very quickly made that call, but maybe he did. And that's part of why we one day want to get that story.
Yeah. Whereas, Rhaenyra, there's no world in which she was like, well, let's see if this would work. I said it on Monday, but it really wasn't. She did not even consider, like, let's try it. Like, let's broach the subject to Viserys or do anything. She's like, no, there's no way I'm not jeopardizing my inheritance.
Also, honorable mention to Maester Aemon, who was offered the throne on the sly during the Great Council of 231. Yeah, 231, yeah. And he said no. He's like, no, I'm a maester, and my brother is a better call, so go with that. Yeah. Okay, let's spend our last few minutes on the new episode titles. We hope to get to have time for some meme talk. What we'll do is we'll maybe set them aside and do like a meme-isode. Maybe we'll make that its own episode. We'll have a little comedy, little good times there instead of all this serious drama and violence and brutality. We'll make some jokes. But for now, we'll finish with these new episode titles. The next one is The Princess and the Queen. It's 67 minutes long. It's pretty awesome. Obviously, that's the title of the release in Dangerous Women that became part of the World of Ice and Fire, which then morphed into the big chunk of Fire and Blood that represents the Dance of Dragons. This story overall has really been, you could say it's the princess and the queen and the prince and the king. Of course, I mean Daemon and Viserys, because they're basically the four main characters. If anyone's the four main characters, it's those four.
Yeah, I agree.
That's going to be a little less true going forward with so many more princes and princesses coming into play. So many more, and then so many less as they all start dropping.
And multiple queens, in fact, as well. Yeah. Not just one queen and not just two queens.
And this king will die as well, and there'll be, a new king and a new queen. Yeah, anyway, it'll be... And yeah, a major theme of this episode will be showing how their friendship is just totally gone, and their rivalry is what's replaced it. But we'll have more to say on that on the prediction episode, preview episode. Yeah. Episode 7 is Driftmark. Certainly Laena's funeral. Absolutely 100% a certainty that's what we'll get. Maybe Laenor's death will be in this episode too. If not, it'll be in the one after. More on that in a sec for that possibility. Interesting quote here. A couple people wrote in to point out what Driftmark looks like. We're going to get to see it again, presumably, which is great because it looked so cool. Anna Wagner says, Driftmark looks like Mont Saint-Michel in France. And Mason T says, they use St. Michael's Mount in the UK for the exterior. You may have noticed that Mont Saint-Michel in France sounds almost the same thing as St. Michael's Mount in the UK. And they are nearly the same. They look almost identical in distant pictures. If you get up close, they look a little more individual. But they're both causeway-connected islands just off the coast of Normandy for Mount St. Michel and Cornwall for St. Michael's Mount. So that's Cornish, and the one in Cornwall, obviously. And both of them have a conical shape. Mount St. Michael is a lot taller. I think they're both really ancient, and not the castles, but the site, human habitation's been in both of those areas since like Bronze Age, maybe even earlier. There's like flint tools have been found there. It's pretty neat as a historical site. So that's really cool. They used this awesome location for Driftmark, and I wanted to share that with y'all. Great comments there, Anna and Mason. Nice. So that could be so Laenor's death could be there. If not, it will be in the next episode, Lord of the Tides, which I also think will be. That's when the sea snake gets sick,
Which is a thing that happens in Fire and Blood.
Yeah, which Sir Vaemond makes his move, and this is when the issue of the Strongs comes up as a preview of it coming up for the throne, is that Sir Vaemond's like, hey, those aren't Velaryons. Why are they going to inherit Driftmark?
Yeah.
You know, it's one thing if they inherit the throne, because that doesn't affect me personally, because I'm Sir Vaemond, and he uses this as an excuse to be like, hey, I should get it.
Yeah.
And in Fire and Blood,
and he's not wrong in my opinion either. Like, I do agree with him that the ancestral, like,
based on the rules,
it shouldn't be these strong boys.
Yeah.
If you believe that they're strong boys, and I do, and Vaemond does. So if you actually believe that, then, well, yeah, that's messed up.
The Master of Complaints will make his final complaint, presumably, because if you recall what happens in Fire and Blood, Rhaenyra kills him and feeds him to Syrax. So, yeah, she's not, doesn't take that mildly.
Rhaenyra and Daemon together.
Yeah, I guess together,
I wouldn't put it all on one of them. Personally.
I thought in Fire and Blood, I think she orders him to do it.
She orders him and then he does it, and then like.
But it's Syrax is who gets fed to.
Yeah,
anyway,
but it's still Daemon.
We'll
see. But I expect it to be a decision they make together.
Yeah, could very much be. The reason it might not be is that Daemon may not be in play yet. If Laenor has just died, you know, I don't know. We'll see. So we'll obviously get deep into that when that happens. That's the longest episode that remains of 68 minutes, Lord of the Tides. Followed by the Green Council, which is 58 minutes. That'll be Viserys' death, almost certainly. Episode 9 is often where the big thing, one of the biggest things that happens, Viserys' death, which will probably come right after we find out that actually the Sea Snake is not going to die. That'll look like, it'll be like, oh, wow, the Sea Snake's going to die. A lot of unsullied folks will be like, oh, no. And he's going to come back. And that's one thing I think that's a clue, unless it's like Viserys, where it's the really long, slow death. If your death isn't like really quick, you give a good chance of it being just like they're teasing you and he's not actually going to die. But if it's something sudden, then they're probably going to die. So that'll probably be the crowning of Aegon and the death of Lyman Beesbury, which is actually an underrated factor, because the death of Lyman Beesbury is why the Greens don't have just a straight march through the Reach and can bring their armies north, which becomes a real problem because some of the vassals, like House Beesbury, are like, no, why did you kill our lord? We're not Greens. You can't just murder our lord and expect us to follow you. That's a huge violation of the feudal vassal system or whatever.
Yeah.
And it looks weak if you don't rise up when your lord is killed. Like, you have to stand up for that. So that actually is huge. That actually it's funny because Criston Cole kills Lyman Beesbury and it indirectly leads to his own death because Criston Cole's army gets stuck in the Riverlands. He's like, okay, our only way to survive is to link up with that army in the Reach, which is a lot farther away than it would have been had it not had to fight its own people because of the death of Lyman Beesbury. So that's going to be a real karmic comeuppance for Criston Cole, assuming they write it that way in the show, which again is not a sure thing, but they've mostly stuck to the book. So the final episode is called The Black Queen, 1 minute longer than episode 9. Most certainly the death of Visenya, the baby Visenya, and that's partly fueling Rhaenyra's anger. She's got plenty of other things to be angry about. She'll get crowned. She'll have her Black Council session where they gather in front of the painted table, and there'll be the sending of envoys, which is when we'll see some more ravens, but also the dragon riders. Luke will fly to Storm's End. Jace will fly north to the Vale and to White Harbor, and then Winterfell. Presumably he'll go to all 3 of those stops, which is why that longer trip will probably be shown in season 1, episode 1.
Season 2,
episode 1, because they haven't cast Cregan Stark, they haven't cast any Manderleys.
Exactly.
Sarah Snow. Yeah. Whereas they have cast the Baratheons that we presumably need for this. We
have the Baratheon daughters cast.
Baratheon daughters, and obviously Luke and Aemond, and Interestingly too, when we found out months ago that George and like his crew had seen the first 9 episodes, they hadn't seen the 10th. That was a big clue that it had dragon action in it, because the reason they wouldn't have seen it was because the CGI was just so far from being finished. So another clue that Vhagar Arax is the final, or one of the final scenes. Yeah. All right, folks, we've got a lot of more fun to go. It feels like a big milestone because of the changing of the actors and the huge time jump, but we're still really just getting started here.
The halfway point of the season, but as the whole, if you're looking at all of the Dance of the Dragons, all 3 or 4 seasons of Dance we'll get. And
if there's 3 seasons, this is only 1/6 of the 30 episodes. If there's 4 seasons, this is only 1/8. So yeah, we're still got a lot to go. That makes me excited. It makes me think about how much fun we all are going to have together going forward, how all the great discussions that have yet to happen. Sandy Hartcorn sends another super chat, says, just because Ashea is the best.
Well, thanks.
Hard to argue with that.
I can argue with it. Because I think Aziz is truly the best.
I will not argue.
I'm biased. Yeah,
I will argue with that. No, I'm not. No, you are. You are. That's a good argument to have. All right, folks. Thanks to Bran Winslow for his awesome intro. Thanks to Joey Townsend for our intro music that we've been using for years. Thanks to Jesse Koval for his alternate version of it that we like to use for our outros.
Although we don't use it during House of the Dragon season.
No,
it's
not
all
as much.
Bran Winslow. I will say that. The intro and outro that y'all see, Brandon Winslow did not just the visuals, he did the music for that too. He did the whole thing, one person, and I'm just so impressed with what he did. And shout out to him, powerless in Puerto Rico right now.
Yep, that is for sure. Yeah, shout out to all those folks dealing without power right now in Puerto Rico and a couple other places like Pakistan. There's a couple places around the world right now that could use some help. So if y'all feel like sending a donation to either of those places, this would be a good time for it.
Yeah, for sure.
And as well, thank you to our mods. That's all the folks on Facebook who keep track of our discussions over there. This time of year, there's a lot of work to do with that, making sure that spoilers aren't dropped on folks who aren't looking for spoilers, making sure we don't get spammed by memes, keeping them all in one place, which makes it a little easier to look at them. And
you check out our meme thread every week.
Yeah, that's what we were going to try to talk about today.
Yeah, but no, so you can go to the Facebook group and you can see each meme thread has like 70 comments on it. So lots of jokes for you.
We got jokes. They got jokes.
They got jokes.
As a group, we got jokes.
Yeah, some of them are my jokes, but yes.
As well, thanks to Michael Klarfeld for these maps you see behind us. That is his work. He is such a great artist and contributor to this fandom. We'll see a lot of y'all on Saturday for the preview for episode 6 and for future episodes on future Saturdays.
Technically, while you do the Patron credits, I could just put memes on the screen.
That is true. You could do that.
I don't have to explain them. And so if you're watching, you can see.
That's a good idea. Shout out to our patrons and those of you who subscribe to us on Spotify. Spotify is one of the best ways to catch the replays because you can watch the video while keeping your bandwidth low and just flip on the video part when there's something to look at and keep it in podcast mode the rest of the time. But of course, you can catch this episode and all of our episodes anywhere you catch podcasts or on YouTube. So yeah, let's give some extra patron shout outs as Ashea gives us some extra memes here. Yeah, our peers of the realm include, hang on a sec, gotta pull this up.
You do that. I laugh over here.
High Lord Jacob Hayes, the Doom Opal, is captain of the Shimmering Tide, relentless as the seas, hand of the king. Lord Giuliano of House U is hand of Queen Ashea, known as the Omni Knight. Lord Jim the Fortuitous of Wars and Politics of Ice and Fire blog, and Warden of the West. What's up, Jim? Lord George Stormsville the Cunning is Lord of the Chiliad and Warden of the East. Capeth the Unfrozen is Lord of the Bricks and Castle Crimson Light, Defender of the Old Gods, and Warden of the North. Lady Kelly McMath of Covington is Lady of the Villa Hills and Crescent Springs, and Warden of the South. Jenny the Just is Captain of the ghost ship Liberty, which vanished in the Shivering Sea over a century ago, but has recently been sighted near Volantis, if the tales can be believed. King Beyond the Wall, Sidney Jesse, is the Fallborn, Lord of Blue Spring and the Haunted Forest, wields a dagger of Dragonglass and the Valyrian steel blade Red Frost. Sea Lord Sean Gallagher is the Titan's Binger, owner of 9 Valyrian steel ears. Araya Flint of the Mountain Flints was captured by the Weeper, only to be raised in the Valley of the Milkwater, Blue Eyes and Golden Memories. Alexander Greyblood is first of the First Men, now crowned in ice, called Silence Bringer, Wood Blinder, and the Snow of Night, wielder of the Ice-Forged Greatsword, Palefrost. As I'm going through these, you'll notice that they are overwhelmingly A Song of Ice and Fire themed. Now, if you all are thinking about joining Patreon, you could add to the level of Dance of the Dragons era naming conventions and titles to maybe balance it out a little more, but you choose what you like. Our small council includes Lord Taylor of House Lineberry, Strength of Stone, Will of Iron, our Master of Coin, Lord Chris B. of House Baelish, always keep your foes confused, Master of Whisperers. Drowned Dan, Lord of House Windsor, Master of Karate, and Friendship for Everyone, and Ships. Lord Goodkill McGee, ruler of Castle Over Yonder, and Grand Maester Scotty. We also would like to thank Lady Direliz of Castle Naki, the Alpha Patron, Lord Dan of the Red Mountains and Castle Great Bell, breaker of the Second Stone. Gregor the Toasty is Lord of the Bread Fort, still baking up tasty things in the Bread Fort. Ashlyn Winter is the Hawk's Eye, Lady of Castle Skyfall. The Lord of the Halls of Castle Hillcrest is wielder of the Valyrian Steel Machete Everglazed. Lord Bemmy Snugglebunny is Guardian Ranger of the Hidden 100-Acre Werewood, dual wielder of the Valyrian Short Swords Glorious Morning and Little Light Wise, sharpshooter of the Werewood and Ironwood, laminated longbow, Todd Von Oben. When you fear things cannot get worse, Snugglebunny enters the fray. An animated longbow would be kind of interesting. You just let it go, it shoots arrows by itself. Yeah, there you go. The Bastard of the Wolfswood is First Forester of the Old Gods, sworn to House Ironwerewood. Listen for the silence. Casey Stark is of House Acres. Peter Rivers is the Pale Dragon and heir to Bloodraven. Lady Mora of House Stark is Archmistress of Apothecaries and Woods Witch. Her castle features werewood doors with painted moons. Lena Snow is the Twilight Star, bastard daughter of Dane, wife of the Trickster, and Lady of Castle Rivia. Little Witcher reference for you there. Jason Stark is second son of the North, wielder of the Valyrian steel sword Bloodbath, and lord of the of Castle Whitewood. The chill is real. Suck-ass Gamer is master of soap and clay. Aminda Pinkwolf is lady and ruler of Castle Whitefast. The ice emboldens. The glare on the screen, I was like, what is that word? Lady Adeline of Sea Dragon Point is keeper of trees, warmth and frost. And Lord Benjen of House Hornwood, of course, rounds it out. Thanks also to King's Justice Sir Troy the Steady, wielder of the Valyrian Steel Blade Fate. And now our Queen's High Council, Rebea Star Eyes, Lady of Waves and Mistress of Ships.
I don't get to read mine?
Oh, yeah. I forgot. That's how we used to do it. You read yours. Yeah, my bad.
Yeah,
you were so busy with memes.
I know. I took the memes off the screen in anticipation.
Cool. Go for it.
Rebea Star Eyes, Lady of Waves and Mistress of Ships, Captain of the Iron Shadow Cat. In the shadows we bear our claws. Grand Archmaester Rennie, whose rod and ring and mask are quartz crystal, wielder of the Valyrian steel pen Fire and Ink. The Purple Lord Leo Anansi, Master of Whisperers. Lady Wolfbird, Mistress of the Eastern Rivers, Gatekeeper of the Northern Skies, Daughter of the Silver Sea and Master of Coin. And finally, Lady Carolyn Carey of Castle Stone Sharp, whose horse is shod in Valyrian steel, Prime Rider of the Rising Hills, and Master of Laws.
Also, shout out to Lady Wolfbird there, Mistress of the Eastern Rivers. Shout out to their podcast, Silent Sisters Podcast.
Yes. Also, if you are a podcaster looking for someone to edit your podcasts, Lady Wolfbird is looking for work.
That's right. She's very good at that.
For House of the Dragon and A Song of Ice and Fire topics, but anything in general. She's very good. She's edited some History Westeros podcasts and plenty of surprise podcasts. As
well as the Learned Hands podcast.
Yeah, that's true as well.
Yeah. Shout out to them. Our Kingsguard is led by Lord Commander Namian of House Darkland, the Night Slayer, Valyrian Sword, Onyx Abyss. Sir Dean the White is Knight of the Black Star. Gregor Snow, called Snowbear, is a bastard of Winterfell. Vaughn of House Forster, his sigil is a mailed fist with extended forefinger and pinky on light blue field. Motto, Visenya let us hold Dark Sister once. Sir Bateman is the Dark Knight. Sir Roland de Stark is Gunslinger Knight of the Winter Kings, back from a 20-year ranging in the lands of Always Winter to protect my King Aziz. Well, thank you. And I am in need of protection. Queen's Guard, there you go. Another one for you, Ashaya.
Lord Captain Commander Haema Helminth, the Sellsword Sentinel. James the Green. Oh, I don't think he means green in that way. James the Green, Lord of the Meadows, Keeper of the Trial of Grasses.
Another Witcher reference there.
Amber the Adamant, the Knight of the Mist and Mother of Squids. The Wintry Wolverine, We Finish What You Begin. Nora Nico. Archmaester Vena, whose ring, rod, and mask are made of steel, not pudding. And Laura Boros, the Lady of Infinity.
Yeah. Our Beard Guard is led by Lord Commander George the Golden, Lady Rita of the Coppermane, the Unbound, Dance the Fervor, and Sir Jeff, Warden of the AC, Wielder of Triad, the multifaceted Beard of Platinum, Red, and Brown. Motto, Stay Frosty, and Bloody Ben Blackwood round out the rest of the Beard Guard.
Bloody Ben himself.
Last, but yeah, right? He's about to come along pretty soon. Could be seeing him very soon. Members of the Knight's History of Westeros Watch are our final shout out. Lord Commander Richard the Ligerheart, wielder of Barry's Ankle Breaker, a flail with blue and silver Valyrian steel spikes. Motto, Go Blue. That's a reference to the Detroit Lions, y'all. And first builder Maegor Snow, a.k.a. Maegor the Cool, the Fire and the Snow, along with first ranger Liam, a.k.a. Sir, waiting on a nickname, and first steward Sir Zach of House Wild, Lord Shredder of the Spiral, wielder of the Valyrian steel axe, Grail. That's our show, everyone. Thanks for coming, or thanks for listening to the replay. We'll see you for more episodes on Saturday, where we do spoilers, and Monday episodes with Sean of House Beard, where we do not have spoilers.
Our guest this Saturday is Dr. Kavita Mudan Finn, a personal friend of mine in the fandom that I've known for a long time, who is a medievalist, and she will have a lot of really interesting things to say. I'm pretty excited for it.
You're going to want to tune into that, especially those of you who are big fans of our historical references, are delving into real-world references and things like that.
Yeah.
To be an extra dose of that this Saturday. So until then, folks, you know what to do. Valar reread us and Valar rewatch us.